HOA Karen got my car towed. Worst mistake she ever made. Years ago, I owned a big Mercedes. It was an 83 300 SD. It had upwards of 860,000 miles on it. I bought it from my father for $1, but actually only gave him 99 pennies a couple years after he bought it from his uncle. It was a massive car that was fun to drive. Like old turbo diesels often do, the turbo went out. The car still ran just fine, but it was more than sluggish going up hills. Living in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains made this an issue. The cost to repair was like $800. I needed about 6 weeks to be able to afford the repair. No big deal. I'll just park it on the condo parking pad about 50 yards from my condo, save up the money, then get it fixed. Then one day I come home and my car is gone. I'm not distraught, but incredibly upset. I call the police and a nice officer comes to take a report about my stolen car. A week or so goes by and I receive a phone call. Alas, my car has not been stolen, it has been towed. I make my way up to the tow yard and ask the dude in the building, what the heck? And he proceeds to tell me that an HOA member named Diane called and said it was improperly parked, against their rules, and had it towed according to their policies and signage. I paid him $550, which was the cost of the storage for over a week and the hookup charge, then drive my car back home. In the process of towing my car, the winch cable put a dent in my front bumper because the car was so long and heavy. I get home to call the landlord and ask about the CC&Rs. She sends them to me and there is nothing in there about the length of parking, only abandoned vehicles. The car was operable and had a valid tag and 4 tires full of air. It was obviously not abandoned. At this point, I began my research. I had the CC&Rs already and knew I was good there. Georgia law states that parking enforcement signs must be 4 feet above grade, which this neighborhood's signs were 3 feet. I found the names of each board member and the property management company. Diane was not listed as a board member. Interesting. I sued. I sued everyone. I sued the driver of the tow truck and the tow company for damaging my vehicle. I sued each and every HOA board member individually for towing my car improperly. I sued my landlord, just in case she needed to be named as well. I sued the property management company since they work for the HOA. I filed a subpoena for any and all records related to towing my car from the tow company. Lucky for me, they actually recorded their phone calls, and I had that phone call recording. I subpoenaed HOA board members for the past 10 years, and Diane was never a board member in the minutes. Finally, I sued Diane. I sued her for the cost of recovering my vehicle. Georgia has a provision in state law that allows for treble damages when a defendant acts with willful misconduct or fraud. I spent roughly 6 hours researching my case and decided to pay myself $100 an hour, which I felt was fair, as an attorney would have charged at least twice that. I amended my complaint to ask for treble damages against Diane. Court day. Before the case is heard, the judge dismisses the case against my landlord, as she had nothing to do with this. He dismisses the case against the tow truck driver, as he was acting as an agent of the company already named. He also dismisses the case against each board member, as they had no part in this at all. I was prepared for and expected these dismissals. It's better to sue everyone remotely involved and have their cases dismissed than to lose because you didn't name the right person. It's my time to shine, and I'm ready. I enter into evidence the state code that regulates signage, then submit my evidence that the signage did not follow the state law. This is my case against the property management company. The judge asks the property management company to respond, and they admit fault. I move for a directed verdict against the property manager for the cost of the hookup. Judge awards me $75 for the tow hookup fee and my $50 court filing fee from the property management company. Next, I enter into evidence the damage to my bumper. I also submit estimates from a Mercedes dealership to repair the bumper. Tow company says, "Yeah, that's our bad. We'll pay it." I'm then awarded $1,200 from them. Next is my case against Diane. I call the guy in the shack at the tow yard who testifies that I drove my car home that day. I enter into evidence the phone call she made to have my car towed, and he testifies to its authenticity. Diane has no clue what's happening, so she doesn't cross-examine him. I call the property manager, who is still in the courtroom, to testify that Diane is not and has never been a board member. She's still befuddled. I submit into evidence my current registration, showing the tag is valid, and a picture of my car in the courthouse parking lot, showing I drove it there that day. I sum up by telling the judge that Diane acted with willful misconduct by calling to have my car towed when it didn't violate any of the CC&Rs. Then I argue that she acted fraudulently by claiming to have authority as a board member to have it towed. I explained that by acting with willful misconduct and fraud, I am entitled to treble damages. I'm not exactly sure what her response was because I was having trouble hearing since I was so excited at having just owned Diane in open court. The judge awarded me $1,075 from Diane, $475 for the money I paid for the storage to the tow yard, plus the $600 in work I put in. Then he hit her with the treble damages. Now she owes me $3,225. 30 days later, my excitement has subsided, but she hasn't paid. I file notice with the court. 30 days after that, still no money. I go to the marshal's office with my judgment, and they tell me to find her bank accounts and come back. 30 days later, I go back to court and file and receive a garnishment order. Paid a private investigator $150 and we find her bank account. Back to the marshal's office, and we go to Bank of America and clean out her checking and savings accounts. I'm short like $1,500 though. Went back to Bank of America a couple months later and she had closed her account. Paid the same private investigator again and found an account at SunTrust. Then went into that bank and took $1,250. I left $250 on my judgment out of spite. I used that $250 judgment against Diane to file a lien against her home. I left it there to mess with her, so she would always remember me when she tried to refinance or sell her home. I never did collect that $250, and the lien was released after 10 years. That was fine with me. I felt she had been punished enough. That jerk. I did wind up fixing the car though. Drove great after that. You need me to make a new batch of fries? Okay, I'll get right on that. So our fast food restaurant closes at midnight on Sundays, and around 11:15 p.m. we start transitioning to close and to get ready for the delivery we get every Sunday. There's a process here where we play a game of how many fries do you think we're going to sell in the last 45 minutes and put the bags of them up front because we know the delivery takes the last hour of our shift like clockwork, and we can't access the big boxes of French fries due to a line of boxes and dollies and counting items and etc. Plus, our manager specifically says not to go in the walk-in during the delivery, not that we could anyway tonight. So I'm usually pretty good at guessing, and we had a car pull up who needs fries times 2 large. So I dropped 4 large, half a bag, the last half we had up front, just in case another car pulls up. It did. That second car pulls up and says, "Hi, I'd like a Bam burger, large with fries, and I need those fries fresh." I was dumb enough to mention, "Well, tonight's your lucky day, because I just dropped some fries in right now." His increasingly pleasant response, "I don't care about those fries, yo. You better make me some new fries, fresh. Don't give me those fries, make some new ones." Enter malicious compliance. Enter another entry into the Jerk Chronicles. Now, I could have just as easily given him the fries I just dropped because they take around 3 minutes to cook, so he was pulling up just as they were finished. But he clearly said he didn't want those fries, so what's a cook to do? Do I lie and say these are not the same fries that they thought they were? I tell him it's gonna be a while on the new fries. He waits. I clean the Frosty machine, a 6-minute job. I'm quick and thorough, right in front of the window. And waits. He honks. I apologize sincerely and explain that the fries are inaccessible until the delivery driver can get everything moved. Shouldn't be that much longer, then we can drop them. Maybe 10 minutes. And waits. I stock the nugget sauces, being mindful that I'm being watched like a hawk, so I pretend to look off in the middle distance of our restaurant, like there's something going on there. He waits some more. Finally, coworker runs up, literally in his slip non-resistant shoes, with the box, and we toss them into the fry bin. All of a sudden, he honks more emphatically now, and I come to the window to hear him yelling, "What? They're frozen? I wanted fresh!" He screeches off into the night, no food in sight. But alas, read him his rights. Officer Pay It Forward drives in for his usual, stops Captain Fresh Fries, gives the fry guy a ticket for aggressive driving, a big no-no and a huge fine in Arizona, and comes into line to get his freshly made fries. I know this because the officer is a regular to our drive-thru and always pays for the person behind him, like always. I guess we should call him Officer Pay It Backward. Speaking of fries, which place has the best fries in the world? Please let us know. McDonald's used to be really good, but I think they changed the oil they use. And now their fries are always cold and they only fill your thing up halfway. Lady doesn't want a drink, so has to pay for each item individually. I worked at a KFC for about 6 months as my first job, and this happened towards the end of my stay. One of our managers, who I'll dub Jay, is pretty strict with us in order to keep up with time and company policy. But we didn't mind, as he usually worked online with us, rather than sit in the office all day. And he does not have patience for rude people. And on one typical military payday, Friday, in towns next to military bases, all soldiers come in force on payday. We were slammed, and he was working register when a lady orders one of our 12-piece buckets, biscuits and all. Now usually you can save some money by ordering them as a meal, gives you drinks as well. So as usual, he asks what drink she wants, intending to make it a meal automatically. She declines the drinks. He tries to explain, "Ma'am, if we make it a meal, and she cuts him off with, "I don't care. I don't need drinks." As I said before, he can't stand rude people. So he immediately shuts up, smiles to me, says, "Sand Snake 7, can I get a 12-piece family fill-up? And don't worry about the drinks." Before turning to her and finishing the order, which took a moment as we couldn't simply press the combo button anymore, rather we had to ring up all the items themselves. He then had to ring up every single item individually, which racks up the price given the amount of items, and then finishes the order, which was well above what the normal price would be. It initially went off without a hitch, but unfortunately for us at the time, retelling a funny story later wasn't really a thought at the time. Rather, we just wanted to keep the line moving. The family behind her ordered another 12-piece family fill-up, but they ordered the combo. As Jay was finishing up with the second family order, the first one stepped aside to check the bags for everything, then they hear the price. Jay rang the second family for almost half the price of theirs, and she storms over. "How come theirs is so cheap? We ordered the same thing," she asks. To which Jay replies, wearing the standard issue customer service smile, "You said you didn't want no combo, ma'am, so I rang them up individually, ma'am. So you paid for them, not as a combo, but as the order you insisted on me making, ma'am." She then asks for the manager, claiming we were scamming her, to which Jay responds by walking behind the wall and coming back 2 seconds later wearing his manager vest. And Jay says, "Hello, I heard we had a problem and I came to see what I can help with." She grabs her food and leaves. Am I the jerk for flipping out on my husband for canceling my job interview? New account because he deleted my main. So this may sound petty, but let me explain. In 2019, I could no longer work because of my physical disabilities. No company wanted to hire me for the past couple of years, and my husband said that it's better I just stay home and not worry about working. I agreed, and he's become the breadwinner. Then, it's like a switch that flipped because chores were 50-50, but after I lost my job, they became 100% on me. Keep in mind my physical disabilities I developed. His excuse for not doing anything to help is that I stay at home 24/7. I told him that's not fair, especially since I suffered from physical discomfort. He made a deal with me and promised that everything will be 50-50 once I start working again. I told him I would find a job, and he laughed and said, "Good luck." I remember this vividly because of the strange laugh that I never heard him laugh before. I started looking for a job again for months, but had no luck till my friend's husband found me a potential job at a company that would have me work from home due to physical strains. I was so excited and felt like I'm capable again despite the struggle. They scheduled an interview with me, and when I told my husband, he looked red in the face but said nothing. 2 days ago, I found out that my job interview was canceled. I found out when my friend reached out to ask why I did that, but I said I had no idea. I checked my email and found nothing because I didn't send anything to the company. My husband came home and admitted to canceling the interview. I asked why, and he said that, "This job has lots of requirements, and you don't seem fit to be accepted there. So to spare you the heartache of being rejected, I just canceled the interview." I flipped out on him and told him he destroyed my one and only chance at landing a job. But he said he was just feeling concerned about my well-being. I told him he probably didn't want me to work because he didn't want to split the house chores, and he seemed offended by that. He threw a fit at how unreasonable and selfish I was to even consider a job without speaking to him first. I told him I don't get involved in his work life. He called me horrible for accusing him of bad intention, and then went out to meet his friends, probably to vent, because one of them told me that my husband is looking out for me, but I was being cruel by yelling at him. He has been cold shouldering me since then, deleted my social media accounts, claiming that they're bad for my mental health because of the negative effect some of these platforms have. Am I the jerk for yelling at him? Not the jerk. New account because he deleted my main? I just had to read this one line and knew that this was not going to be you in the wrong. This man has extreme control issues. Run. He should be lifting you up and encouraging your growth and happiness, not knocking you down when you try to do something that makes you happy. I hope you realize you deserve so much better. Same. I read that first line and said out loud, "Get out." OP, this man has red flags as far as the eye can see. Run. Not the jerk. Hopefully, the friends who helped them get the interview will be understanding and let OP stay with them, or maybe family. This is a scary situation. It's like he doesn't want OP having a life outside of their home, even if it's just a virtual one. Am I the jerk for walking out of my sister's wedding after she tried to use me as free childcare? A few months ago, my 31 male sister, who's 29, announced that she was going to get married. The planning process took a while, but the date and venue were agreed on. Now, my sister has a baby, who's 1, that just loves to cry. He cries all the time, unless someone takes him outside for fresh air. So a few days ago, the wedding started. Because I was out of town, I missed the night before the wedding, basically a get-together period for family members and a big party, but showed up for the ceremony and reception. The second I got there, my sister asked me to take the baby outside in order to calm him down. I agreed because the ceremony hadn't started yet, but she asked me to take the baby outside again a while later. When I asked why the baby didn't have a sitter, she said that they spent all the money on the ceremony and parties. I was kind of annoyed because I wanted to sit in on the ceremony, but just about everyone jumped on me telling me to do my sister a favor and that it was her day. I asked her about when I was expected to take the baby out for fresh air, and she gave me this huge list of times that basically meant I missed out on all the important parts. I wouldn't be there for the exchanging of vows, the reception, the aisle walk, the readings, the kiss, etc. I figured out that in total, I would have about 30 minutes actually sitting inside, and the rest was just about the baby. When I pointed this out to her, she said someone would videotape it for me, but I wasn't convinced. I wanted to watch my sister reach a milestone, and that was what I came for. I told her that someone else could watch the baby for her, and that as her brother, I wanted to watch the wedding and not have to miss her getting married. Again, she told me to just do it. I was really mad, but tried not to show it on the outside. When I asked about the reception, she told me, "Oh, you'll have to miss out. The baby needs to be outside and has to be fed." That was the final straw, and when my mother was holding the baby, I slipped out and just left. The next day, I get a call from my sister, and she's screaming about how I ruined her wedding and how the baby wouldn't stop crying. I told her that I left because she treated me like a babysitter instead of a guest/family member, and said that it was her fault if she couldn't get a nanny or ask a friend to do it. Since then, I've been bombarded with calls from family calling me selfish and telling me that I am effectively disowned unless I apologize. I see no reason to. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Why couldn't she rotate baby duty between family members? She basically implied you were the least important person for her at the wedding. Plus, how expensive would it have been to hire a babysitter? Or your parents could have chipped in and gotten one. Even more important, why didn't sister ask OP beforehand? He's not only the least important person at the wedding for the bride, but also not important enough to be notified prior to the actual ceremony. OP's sister's planning is very poor. Not having family members rotate the duty is one thing, but blowing all the money on parties without regard to their own kid is another. OP, not the jerk at all. 1. You are not free childcare. Expecting you to single-handedly take care of a kid, any kid that isn't your own, without prior consultation and agreement is jerk moves and disrespectful. 2. She's had months to plan the wedding. There's more than enough time to hire a babysitter for a ceremony. Poor planning and or wanting to leave you no choice is totally on her, and you're within your right to refuse. 3. Even if there's no babysitter due to an accident, which I doubt, the guests can still rotate the babysitting duty. Forcing all of that on you just shows how little she values you as a guest, not a babysitter. Am I the jerk for asking my husband to choose between his daughters? I hope this post won't look messy. I'm so riled up that help me God. Me, female 50, and my husband, male 51, were married for 21 years. He divorced his pregnant wife to get with me, but he saw his daughter, Kristen, whenever he wanted. Later, I gave birth to our daughter, Sasha, but my husband was cheating on me and we took a break. I forbade him to see our daughter. He missed her early years, and now I think it changed everything. He doesn't treat Kristen, who's 21, and Sasha, who's 18, the same. Kristen is his number one thing. He comes running if she calls him, and he can just drop everything if she asks. He pays for Sasha's education, but she just isn't his priority. He always talks about Kristen. It's always about her. Sasha feels it, and it hurts her. I'm sure Kristen hates me for breaking her mom and her husband up. She always does things to rile me up. She calls my husband 5 times a day to chat, even late at night when she knows he's with me. She makes him spend a week and a month with her just chilling in his apartment. He never spends as much time with Sasha, and we live together. It's a victory if I manage to get us to watch a movie together. Recently, I learned that my husband left everything to Kristen in his will. She gets an apartment, his WW2 collection, when Sasha gets just one room in an old hostel building. Now there is a cat. Kristen already has 3. There is no place for more, so she dragged one into my husband's flat. She's claiming someone threw him away and she just wanted to give him a home. That's BS. She's doing everything to keep my husband chained to his second flat, away from his other daughter and me. He now has to stay there to feed it. Kristen does it when he's not there, but now he has a reason to spend more time in his flat, and he keeps doing it. Kristen knew it would be like this. She did this on purpose, I'm sure. I asked my husband to give the cat away, or we'd have a problem. He said he'd think, but he went and consulted Kristen. From what I got, she accused him of betraying that cat and stopped talking to him. My husband spent all night writing her apologies, and he told me he'd never get rid of the cat. He didn't even want it. Kristen bought it. It's just one more thing that keeps him away from his family. I finally had enough, and I told him to pick between Kristen and Sasha. He can't have 2 relationships at once, and if he cares about Sasha, he has to prove it and pick her at least this once. It was weeks ago, but he refuses to give me his answer, and I keep feeling like a jerk, but then I get angry again. I know he loves Kristen, but maybe the threat to not seeing Sasha will make him realize he has another daughter who needs his attention. So, am I the jerk for wanting my husband to focus on our daughter for a change instead of constantly running around with his first daughter? So, you engaged in parental alienation because you were jealous, and Dad and Sasha didn't bond because of you, and now you're upset because they're not bonded? You're the jerk. I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to get him to improve his relationship with Sasha, but OP did it wrong and probably only made it worse. OP. I stole another woman's husband while she was pregnant, was shocked when he did the same to me, alienated him from our kid, and am now trying to alienate him from the kid he had with the wife I stole him from. Am I the jerk? Must be on something. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. I was close to everyone sucks here, but you got with a married man while his wife was pregnant and expect him to be a good guy? You banned him from seeing Sasha and are surprised he has a stronger bond with Kristen? I finally had enough, and I told him to pick between Kristen and Sasha. He can't have 2 relationships at once, and if he cares about Sasha, he has to prove it and pick her at least this once. This is just so ridiculous. Honestly, I can't even. You need a really, really, really good therapist, not Reddit. You're the jerk, just for parental alienation alone. But this post is so full of eye roll. You engaged in an affair with a married man expecting a kid. We're all surprised when he cheated on you, as if it were a secret he was a cheater. Alienated his kid and preventing a bond, then are all upset because this stellar man isn't the father you want him to be. At what point do you accept accountability for this crap show? Everyone sucks here. Him for cheating, you for parental alienation and the cheating. By the way, hubby is still cheating. His daughter is just his alibi, and the new girlfriend probably just moved into the apartment. Am I the jerk for saying my husband is a good father? When he was in his early 20s, my husband got a girl pregnant. They were casually dating in college. They had a lot of mutual friends. He didn't want to be a dad and told her as much, but she was adamant about keeping the baby. He was supportive through the pregnancy, but was clear he didn't want to be involved. He wanted to renounce his rights, but ended up with an agreement where he still pays child support but doesn't do visitation nor have involvement in any parental decisions. The girl is now 12. He hasn't met her, nor plans to ever do so. I met him 8 years ago. We've been married for almost 7. He told me about the whole having a biological kid out there very early on. I was and am fine with it. It is sad that a kid came into the world under those circumstances, but I don't think he was wrong for choosing not to be involved. We now have a 5-year-old son. My husband has always been wonderful to me. That's why I fell in love with him. He was great during the pregnancy and birth and has been great to our son and me ever since. I think he's a wonderful dad and husband. The problem? 2 of his friends married their college girlfriends, whom were/are friends with his biological daughter's mother. And now 3 occasions in conversations where I said my husband is a wonderful father, one of them said something snarky and mean like, yeah, to only one of his kids. Over the weekend, we attended one of their kids' birthday parties. I was chatting to another mom about motherhood and said that it's easier when you have a good team player in your spouse. The homeowner mom chimed in to say loudly, if only the mother of his other kid had the same. Later, I confronted her in the kitchen, said I was very tired of her and the other friends' comments about my husband, that she didn't need to invite us to things or spend time with us if she didn't want to, but it was super disrespectful to be constantly insulting him as a father. She told me she initially liked me, but finds it distasteful and rude that I keep praising my husband as a good father when I'm well aware that he isn't, that she will always make sure to correct me because it's not okay that he got away with what he did and now gets to play happy family with me and our son. The conversation went south from then on, and of course we left. The other mom friend texted me yesterday to tell me she completely backs up what the other said and that I'm horrible for marrying and having a kid with a deadbeat, and on top of it, praise him as a good dad. I have no doubts of my feelings. My husband has been and is great with our son and with me. I guess I never thought how my words would be insensitive towards his biological daughter and her mother, whom I've never met. But am I the jerk for occasionally saying my husband is a good father when talking to people? Should I stop? Not the jerk, and I really don't get all the comments saying otherwise. He wasn't ready to be a father then, made that very clear to the ex, still supported her through the pregnancy, still pays child support, and has stuck to their agreement, as has the ex. What, is he just supposed to show up at random, toss that girl's life into disarray just so he's not a deadbeat, which he doesn't seem to be at all? Your other comments even make it clear that he recognized it would be unethical to give away parental rights, which it wouldn't have been. I mean, is there something I'm missing here? He can't be a good or a bad father to that girl because he is not her father in anything more than blood. He is a father to your son and a good one, in ways beyond that. So no, you're not the jerk for saying that he is what he is. Not the jerk. This may get me downvoted, but all the people saying you're the jerk, do you remember the post about the guy calling his ex a deadbeat because she didn't want anything to do with the kid he talked her into giving him? She paid child support, more than needed, and requested to have nothing to do with them. Everyone jumped down that guy's throat, rightly so, for calling her a deadbeat and stated she was within her rights to do that. Why is it different if it's a man? He didn't want a kid then. He told her and she still had the kid. He pays child support, just like that woman did. Is it because he decided to have a kid when he got older and wiser, or is it simply because he's a man? Not the jerk. He made it clear that he wasn't interested in being a single father in his 20s, and it sounds like the mother was willing to be a single mother. He chose to have a kid with you and sounds like a great dad. Good on you for defending him, but you might want to talk to him about dropping those friends. I'm kind of torn here between everyone sucks and you're the jerk. You're right that they probably just shouldn't hang out with you and your husband, but if your husband is friends with their spouses, they're a little bit stuck, and they should let sleeping dogs lie. And yet, why do you talk about what a great father and husband he is that often, that it's now come up in conversation 3+ times? It sounds like you are defensive and constantly reiterating that he's a great father in front of these women who are good friends with the woman he left to parent alone. So I honestly don't blame them for wanting you to shut it. So it comes down to why this has come up so often. If they are constantly bringing it up, unprompted, that your husband sucks as a dad, they should stop. But you should also stop constantly bringing up, unprompted, that he's a great dad. Their friend has been a single parent for years because he only values one of his children. You've decided that's okay with you, but it doesn't have to be okay with them. Everyone sucks here. He has a kid that he has rejected and never made an effort to know. Punishing that kid and leaving her without a father is brutal. He is a selectively good father, which to the people that see the damage to his first kid must feel like a slap in the face. You're the jerk. I'm a firm believer that people can change and that your husband is in a different mental space and he's now ready to be a dad, whereas before he wasn't. That being said, You can't go around saying he's a good dad when he only cares about one of his kids, especially around people that knew him in college and remember him as the guy that didn't want any part of his daughter's life. Maybe you should modify what you're saying. My husband is a good father to our son. Because according to you, he is. But there's another kid whose life he's absent from, and that is not being a good father to that kid, your son's half-sibling. Even I was cringing at your comment, because how can you just ignore that he's an absentee father to one of his kids? I really want to say you're not the jerk, but when I think about that kid who he's neglected, your generic praise even rubs me the wrong way, because I feel for the kid he's basically abandoned. That's not being a good father, OP. You're the jerk. Are you the jerk for saying your husband is a good father in front of company that knows otherwise? Yes, you are. He has picked and chosen which child to actually be present for. He made a choice, and that choice was to not be around. That automatically takes him out of the good father category. You know it's an issue, it's already been said before, but you will still insist on saying he's a good father around them. That's your opinion. You were stating it around them, and then you say they aren't allowed their opinion? If you don't want to hear it, don't go. If it's not true, then stop saying it. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for saying that her husband is a good father around those friends or not? Please let us know. Oh, this one is spicy. I can't wait to read what our listeners think of this one. Fiance makes me leave the house so she can hang out with her ex. So, super weird situation, and I need a judgment. I, 32 male, have been engaged to Amanda, 34 female, for about a year. We dated for 3. She has a 12-year-old daughter named Alexis. Me and Alexis have a good relationship. Me, Amanda, and her ex all have a good relationship for the most part. I'm totally comfortable with my role. So Amanda, her ex, and Alexis have this weird thing they do. They all get together on Sundays and hang out, the 3 of them. I guess it started as a family tradition, and then once they divorced, they kept it going. They make breakfast, watch movies, and just hang around all day together. I find it really weird, to be honest. Like, I'm not insecure about it, but why you would want to spend a day a week with your ex is beyond me. I said how weird I found this when we started dating, but Amanda said that Alexis looks forward to it weekly, so she never stopped it. So at first, I would just hang in our room or the basement all Sunday, but I got tired of being trapped in my own house, so I started leaving the whole day. Amanda would never ask where I was going or anything, wouldn't even notice I was gone. So at first, I was golfing or getting errands done, or would find a bar. But then I reconnected with my old friend, Bella. Bella and me dated 5 years ago and have remained good friends since. She just broke up with her husband and moved into a new apartment. I told her one Sunday that I was just planning on going to the movies, and she instead invited me over. We smoked together, watched some movies, cooked, and just hung out. It was nice, and ever since it's become my weekly tradition. Whenever Sunday would come, I'd head over to Bella's and we'd just hang out all day. I didn't see the need to bring up to Amanda where I was going. She never asked or even wondered where I was every Sunday. So yesterday, Bella stopped by our house to drop off my phone charger because I left it at her place. Amanda asked why Bella had my phone charger, and I told her that it's where I was on Sunday. She asked why I was there, and I told her that was my Sunday hangout spot. She flipped out, saying how rude it was to not let her know I was hanging out with an ex. I laughed and said, "Do you really not see the irony with that statement?" She said it's different because she was forthcoming about her and her ex's relationship, and that if I had an issue with it, then I should have said so. I said I did already bring it up, and that she said it was important to her daughter. Was I supposed to interfere with the highlight of her daughter's week in order to make myself feel better? No, I'll just sneak out the back door and head to my friend's house, and that I didn't see why this was even an issue at all. We trust each other and are adults. Amanda doesn't want me over there anymore and said she wants me to find another way to spend my Sundays. I said, then I don't want your ex over here on Sundays anymore if that's how we're playing this. Am I the jerk? You had us in the first half, but man, so many red flags in the second half. 100% you're the jerk. Hanging with an ex and keeping it a secret? That alone makes you the jerk. While I totally agree with your judgment that OP is the jerk and obviously does have insecurity issues, even if he specifically says he doesn't, I can't help but ask myself why the girlfriend did never even bother to ask if he had a good day, too, or what he was doing all day. If I spent a day without my significant other, I always ask how their day was, etc., just because I care and I'm interested in my partner. And as their relationship seems to be good, Why was he never asked to join them every now and then if they consider him part of the family too? I know it's a tradition, but this way, he will always be an outsider. I think OP mentions that she never directly asked him what he was doing, which is kind of a weird way to put it, and that she complained about her ex afterwards a few times, so at least it seems like she was talking about her day. If he originally was running errands or just hanging out with male buddies, I can see why the fiancé wouldn't question it. The difference is that the fiancé is hanging out with her ex in the company of their daughter. OP is hanging out with his ex solo. Edit. And OP knew about his fiancé's situation from the beginning. The tradition predates their entire relationship. There was an understanding from the beginning. OP's behavior is not only a secret, but it's new. There was no discussion or agreement. The difference is also that the fiancé wants to marry the man, allegedly, while excluding him from what she calls a family tradition. Sorry, that family doesn't exist in that form anymore. What, should OP be excluded from all the major holidays? Or am I being too much, and really one full day every week is clearly the appropriate amount of time to exercise a family tradition without your fiancé? How people think that's normal is wild to me. The daughter should of course have quality time with her dad, but is there a legit reason why if mom is present, her fiancé should be excluded? They're pretending once a week that he doesn't exist, and mommy and daddy are back together. Is that healthy for the kid? 'Cause I tell you this, not healthy for the new family, and I don't even know if it's healthy for the kid who may simply see OP as the placeholder while mommy and daddy figure it out. This is totally revenge on his part too. Like, he can't understand why his girlfriend is trying to be a good co-parent with someone they have a kid with, but finds it completely normal and healthy to go spend time with his ex he has absolutely no connection to, aside from the fact they used to date, and every Sunday? You're the jerk, OP. Mega time. Edit. I don't think you can really call yourself an adult when you're taking petty revenge shots like this towards someone who's supposed to be your partner. Just break up already. Holy cow. There's definitely a petty revenge feel to this. Oh yeah? If you're spending a whole day with your ex, then I will too. That's a childish reaction, as is not telling his fiancé and then pretending that his actions are equivalent to hers. Both of these things definitely make OP the jerk. That said, I'm also a step-parent. I have a good relationship with my stepkid and my husband and his ex co-parent amicably, which is good for all of us. But if they had a tradition, from which I was excluded, of spending an entire day each week, every week, all together at our house, during which time I had to make myself scarce, that would be odd. I could see how this tradition started as a way to help the daughter through the breakup, but continuing it as a weekly thing for years while not recognizing the absence of current partners isn't really healthy. Of course, the way to handle that would have been through better communication, not passive-aggressive pettiness. So I don't fault OP for feeling hurt by an odd situation, but yeah, 0 for 10 to not recommend for the way he handled it. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his fiancé? Please let us know. Hey Reddit boy, what if I told you to go to the basement so my ex can come over and we can hang out upstairs? What ex? Nobody ever wanted you, Karen, you know that. Stop it! You know I'm sensitive about that! Am I the jerk for pressing charges on a former friend for shaving my head? For context, a relative of what used to be a close friend of mine, whom we'll call Gary for this story, contracted cancer. I, mid-20s male, was sympathetic and even contributed $100 to a donation pool for their treatment. But Gary came to me one day and took his hat off to reveal a freshly shaven head. He told me that everyone in his family was doing this in support of his relative, and so were a lot of our mutual friends. Then he asked that I get on the bandwagon. I told him I didn't want to shave my head because I like my hair. My hair is black, regularly combed, and well styled. He said I could just get a wig or something, and had actually brought his shaver kit. He was unboxing it when I told him that this was not happening. I don't even really know his relative that he's doing this for, so I'm not doing it. End of discussion. He called me a jerk and left angry. We didn't speak for a week. Then last Saturday, I got invited to a party at another close friend's house. There, I found out that Gary had tried the same thing on several other friends, and only a couple of them actually did shave their heads. Gary wasn't at the party, so I had a blast hanging out, playing video games and listening to rock music. But I had way too much to drink and couldn't drive home, so they said I could just sleep upstairs. I passed out on a bed, and it was a blissful sleep till I was shaken awake by another friend who told me Gary had showed up late and they caught him shaving my head while I was passed out. I saw what I looked like in a mirror and wanted to scream like I was in a horror movie. Gary even shaved one of my eyebrows. Gary was still there and acting proud of himself, saying, Now you're gonna have to shave off the rest, just like me. I was furious and called the cops. When they got there, Gary fully admitted to what he had done to me and even said he was justified. The police didn't seem to think so, as this is classified as a form of assault. They asked me if I wanted to press charges, and I said yes. Gary lost it on me while they took him away in cuffs. I tried getting my hair restyled into something presentable, but there was no saving it, and now I'm bald too. Now a bunch of Gary's family are telling me to drop the charges because Gary was off his meds and didn't mean to do it. I was like, what? Because I never knew he was on meds. But I still refuse to drop the charges. It'll take months to grow my hair back the way it was. But all of the calls and messages from Gary's relatives are starting to get to me. Just about everyone else in our friend group has gut Gary out though, and say that I'm doing the right thing by not dropping the charges. So now I'm divided. Am I the jerk for pressing charges on a former friend for shaving my head in my sleep? Edit. I want to make something clear here. So many people have said things like, dude, it's just hair. But would they all be saying that if I wasn't a man? What if I was a girl that had had her hair that took years to grow? Would they be saying the same thing? Sure, hair grows back, but it takes time. If it was something that grew back fast, people would be less inclined to care. But it's not fast. It takes months. And for someone who had long hair, years. That's a lot of time wasted growing. And I don't plan on pushing for Gary to go to prison, but I don't plan to drop the charges either. His family already bailed him out, and while I didn't know he was on meds, I knew he had quite the temper and even an entitled attitude at times. One example being a lunch where he wanted us all to combine the check and split it evenly. He got the most expensive thing on the menu. I got a cheeseburger. When we all said no, Gary went off on us for not being good friends. He's always been a jerk when he doesn't get his way, and I've only known him for like 3 years. This incident was the last straw, not just for me, but for a lot of other mutual friends. As for the charges, I don't want Gary to go to prison, but I would like him to get some therapy and community service. With the way Gary has acted around me in the past and what he did to me, I actually wonder how long before he got more violent. I've seen and heard of him getting in fights for less. Not the jerk. Contact the DA that is handling this case and let him know that his family is pressuring you to drop the charges. They may be violating the law too. If Gary hasn't learned to take his meds, a little time in jail will teach him that lesson. Edit. I didn't mean to suggest jail will help him. I believe facing negative consequences for his actions versus getting out of them will help him. OP. That's a very good idea. I'll take care of that as soon as I can. Make copies of all the texts. Save the voicemails. Don't block them. Let them spew, as all this info should go to the police. And yeah, not the jerk. Gary is an adult. He knows what'll happen if he goes off his meds. He did it anyway. Sounds like his family might be doing a wee bit of enabling there. No means no. If he hasn't figured it out by now, the authorities need to teach him. Not the jerk. Tell a family you're going to report them for harassment if they keep this up, and then follow through. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Gary? Please let us know. I don't blame you for pressing charges. I probably would have just beat him up, but hey, that's just me. No one can fire my boss, so she does it herself. This isn't my story, but I was able to witness it all in its glory because I used to work for one of the people involved. Years ago, I used to work at a state government agency where my boss was a political appointee. Her mom was a big wig in our governor's party who wrangled a political appointment for her daughter, which meant she had some clout behind her. Let's call her Shannon. Shannon was not good at her job at all. She was frequently out of the office for meetings, 2-hour lunches, coffee with friends, a bit of shopping. She was also a bully and a tyrant. She bullied her staff and would hold the threat of firing over everyone's heads to get them to do what she wanted. She wasn't a micromanager because she was never around enough to actually micromanage anything. And she was widely disliked throughout the entire building. This was a large agency, so to have a building where almost everyone disliked you took a lot of work. The problem is that, as a political appointee, she was untouchable. The people who had the power to fire her couldn't because of her family. Even the number 3 person in the agency couldn't do it, and he was a political appointee as well. But after a year of mystery meetings and time out of the office, her excuses were catching up to her. The agency director removed her from her job and put her in charge of special projects. Anyone who's worked in a corporate job knows that people get put in charge of special projects because they were largely incapable of doing their previous jobs. They didn't get fired, but they no longer had any power. This was Shannon's case. For a while, she seemed to get the message. She shaped up, didn't have any more mystery meetings, didn't disappear from the building for 2 hours, and treated people somewhat nicely. Of course, it didn't last, and Shannon returned to her old ways. Around that time, we got a new assistant director. We'll call her Trisha, who was also a political appointee. She was the number 2 person in the whole agency, and she was great to work for. She was very serious about her job. She had access to Shannon's electronic calendar and saw what Shannon had been up to. She then cross-checked the security logs to see when Shannon was in and out of the building. After her brief investigation, Trisha emailed Shannon with a list of dates and said, "Can you tell me more about these different meetings you were having and why they took you so long?" I'm paraphrasing. Well, Shannon wasn't having any of that. How dare Trisha call her character into question? This was an outrage. It was so outrageous, in fact, that Shannon wrote a resignation letter and slammed it down on Trisha's desk. That'll show her. After a few hours, Shannon had time to think about what she had done. She remembered that she had a 1-year-old at home. She also remembered that her husband was an unskilled truck driver who made $8 an hour. Edit. He was a local delivery driver for a construction firm, not a CDL driver. And she remembered that she was the primary breadwinner for her family. She went back, hat in hand, and apologized for her attitude. She said she was willing to try harder, and then asked Trisha if she could please possibly have her letter back. Pretty please? Trisha said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're too late. I already processed the letter and sent it off to HR. I'm afraid I can't undo that." Do you remember in the movie The Incredibles, when Mr. Incredible fought the giant ball with legs? The ball was so indestructible and powerful, the only thing that could beat it was itself? This was that moment. The previously untouchable political appointee had just been fired by the only political appointee who had that power, herself. And rather than protect her or do her a solid, Trisha would not undo her self-termination. She just let Shannon be her own undoing. When news of Shannon's self-firing raced through the building, you could hear the cries of, "What? Are you serious?" followed by howls of laughter as each new person heard the story. Shannon was out, and everyone who had to deal with her was much happier than they had ever been in that job. Am I the jerk for not wanting to co-own a house with my husband? Here's the background. I'm female 30, and my husband is male 35. He comes from a wealthy family, and he works for the family business. When we met 7.5 years ago, I was a fresh college graduate working a minimum wage job and neck deep in student loans. We got married very fast, 8 months after meeting, and I had met his parents, all of 3 times. His parents insisted that I sign a prenup, and I understand them completely. If my kid was in the same situation, I would have made the same decision. This prenup pretty much says that in the event of a divorce, I get nothing. Unless he cheats, then I get alimony. Also, finances, debts, properties, and savings are completely separate unless both our names are on the asset. I asked to amend it so that he gets nothing too, and they all agreed that it was fair. The house we live in is owned by his parents, and the car he drives is a company car. We have a joint account for monthly expenses, groceries, utilities, landscaping, etc., that we put in equal amounts. Over the last 7 years, I've been able to get a good job, pay off all my loans, not having to pay for housing is a huge bonus, and I saved about 35% for a down payment on a house and a substantial emergency fund. On the other hand, I know that my husband has credit card debts since he is of the mindset, buy it now and pay it off later. He has no asset to his name except for a 401k, no savings at all. Even though my in-laws are great and they consider this house as ours and not theirs, I want something to my name. I want to have a house that is my own to change how I want and to be proud of. Over the years, my husband won't even contemplate the idea of buying a house. I started looking and finally found the house of my dreams, and suddenly my husband did a 180 and wants to co-own the house with me. His idea is that I put the down payment, pay another 15%, and he pays for the other 50%. That way we are equal owners. I do not want to do that. I know my husband, and he will not be able to pay his part of the mortgage. Sometimes his share of the monthly expenses is transferred by his parents, as well as them always paying off some of his debts. Now he won't even talk to me. Says if I don't agree to co-owning with him, then he won't move in with me at all. That it shows that I don't trust him. So what are your advices on this whole mess? Absolutely talk to an attorney. I would be concerned that the house could be considered a marital asset even if it's only in your name, since it will have been purchased while you're married. Not the jerk. OP. I already did. The prenup was detailed enough that nothing without both our names on the title is considered the property of the sole owner. Dream houses within your budget don't come along very often. In your shoes, I would put an offer on it. OP. Especially in this market, it took me almost a year to find something I like and within budget. But are you prepared to get divorced over it? Considering the only thing she said about her husband is that he's financially irresponsible, selfish, and gets tons of extra financial support that primarily benefits him, my guess is probably not even a "things with my husband are great except one thing." It sounds like the house is just the catalyst, so OP doesn't have to actually end the relationship herself. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay my brother his money back? About 10 years ago, my brother, Seth, gave me $12,000. I had a very bad gambling problem and took money out of my other brother, Carter's, shop, about $10,000. I gambled all the money away. So right after that, I called Seth and begged him to help me. Seth took a loan for $12,000 so I could pay Carter back, and Seth gave me the $2,000 extra and to start therapy to fix my gambling problem. He was really chill about the money until he began to plan his wedding. All of a sudden, my mother started to pressure me to pay him back ASAP because he was getting married and needed the money. My brother didn't ask. Then lockdown hit and his work hours got cut back. He began to ask me to pay him back slowly and that he knew lockdown hit everyone hard, but that he needed the money back. I paid him back $2,000, but then I had to get myself a new car because my wife had a promotion and started to work in another part of the city and needed our car to get to work. 1 year after lockdown, they moved to another apartment, and then he began to pressure me that I need to pay him back ASAP. I wanted to pay him back, but my wife surprised me with a vacation for my birthday. Then I had to buy another car because my first car broke down. Seth confronted me about the car, and I told him that my father-in-law paid for it. Seth's wife organized a small surprise barbecue for him and invited us too. After the barbecue, we told my brother about the vacation for my birthday, and Seth and his wife started acting weird after that. They were avoiding eye contact, and when we left, they were cold. I thought that was very rude. After the barbecue, his wife texts me about how she wishes us a nice vacation and how she wonders if they have to sue us for the money. She goes on about how my brother works 3 jobs. So first of all, my job is very hard too, and how dare she suggest to sue me? I mean, who is she? And I helped my brother out many times. When we were on vacation, his wife drove my car because car driving causes her panic attacks, so she wanted to try driving a small car. I never asked them for gas money then, and my brother drove my car a few times too. I bought him an Apple TV as a birthday present, and I helped him move. I called him right after she texted me, and I told him that if his money is tight, he shouldn't have moved during the middle of a lockdown, and that he shouldn't have bought a $700 TV. Then he starts telling me that he gave me $12,000 and only asks back for $10,000, and he doesn't even add the interest he paid the bank into that. Frankly, I didn't ask him to give me $12,000. He got really upset, and now he isn't talking to me, neither is his wife. My mom urges me to apologize, but I just don't see the point. Helping is mutual, and I don't really appreciate them urging me like that and acting like I never helped them, and I'm really mad at his wife for getting between us. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Convert your help to money and pay back the rest. You can take a loan just like your brother did, Mr. Leach. You're the jerk. You can't really believe that letting your sister-in-law test drive your car without giving you gas money or helping them move means you don't have any moral obligation to pay back ASAP the $12,000 plus interest your brother was stuck with? How can you go on vacation or buy 2 new cars when you owe this debt? Why did your wife buy such an expensive car? Because if she knows about this loan, she's just as morally bankrupt as you. Stealing from both of your brothers must give you the same adrenaline rush as when you won a bet. Just don't expect anyone to lift a finger to help you in the future. You're the jerk. Just pay the money back. And yeah, it looks crappy when you are splurging on nice things to have when people are begging you for the money you owe them because they have legitimate needs. And because you don't seem to understand, lending a car does not equal $12,000, and a $700 TV does not equal $12,000. Kick me out of class because rules state that I must be clean-shaven? Guess I'll have to comply. Many years ago, I attended and graduated from a culinary institute. The program was for professional cooking. It was a lot more than just learning to cook though. It also had classes about menu planning and creation, restaurant management, finance and cost analysis, etc. It was more of a program to teach you how to be a chef and run a restaurant. But because it was a professional program, there were some very strict policies. When attending classes outside of the kitchen, there was a uniform to wear. When classes were in the kitchen, there was another: hat, jacket, apron, pants, and non-slip shoes. While in the kitchen, no jewelry or piercings could be worn, no nail polish either. Men had to be clean-shaven, no beards or mustaches, even stubble was not allowed, and hair kept tidy. I saw a guy use a kitchen knife to cut off his dreads when they stuck out of his chef's hat. One policy was time and attendance. Classes started at a specific time, not a minute later. When the start time came, the chef would close and lock the door. There was no leniency. There was also no valid reason to be late. Public transit late due to a snowstorm? Not valid. What really made this worse was that to graduate, you needed to have a certain number of hours in the kitchen. If you were a minute late and were not allowed into class that day, you would then be missing those 5 hours and would have no way to make them up. The only reason that was accepted to miss a class was with a doctor's note. With a doctor's note, you then had to show up an hour early each day for 5 days to prep the kitchen to make up the missing hours. I lived a bit more than an hour away from the school by public transit. Some classes started at 6 a.m., others at 9 a.m., others at 1 p.m. Getting to the early classes on time was always a pain, especially making sure I was early in case of any delays. For the 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. classes, I would usually shave the evening before. No big deal. I had no issues doing this for at least a year. One day, partway through a class that had started at 6 a.m., the chef stopped me and asked if I had shaved that morning. I told him honestly that since I had to be up at 4 a.m. to make it on time, I shaved the night before. This was unacceptable to him and I was sent out of class. He did tell me I could return once I had shaved. He probably expected me to go home and not return for the day. There was no way I was going to have to fight to make up hours over something so trivial. I left class and found the closest convenience store. I purchased the cheapest plastic disposable razor I could find and a travel-size shaving cream. I went back to school and proceeded to shave my face in the men's restroom. By the time I was done, my face was bleeding all over. My skin irritated so bad, I stuck little pieces of toilet paper on all the spots where I was bleeding. I put my uniform on, walked through the school, right back to the kitchen, and continued on what I was doing. The look on the chef's face was great. How professional do I look now? I would love to say that the policy was changed or that he let up a bit, but no. He simply told me I looked ridiculous and to get back to the assignment. "I don't work here, chicken lady," vegan reveal during medical emergency story. I was at the supermarket browsing the wares near the end of an aisle. Round the corner, I see a guy who looks a crusty punk type of fellow. He's shopping just the same as me until BAM! He goes straight down on the floor. I go over to him, he's sprawled on the floor. No movement, he looks unconscious. It seems to me he's having an epileptic fit or a seizure. I pull out my phone and dial 999 for the ambulance to come. Seconds later, the shop staff run over. They know first aid. I offer them my phone so they can speak to the ambulance people since they know better about looking out for the guy. The shop worker is checking his breathing, pulse, etc. and relaying that over the phone. So I'm hanging around, very concerned about the guy on the ground and also now just waiting patiently for my mobile to be returned. Suddenly, I get a tug on my elbow. It's a woman asking me about chicken. I'm like, what? "Is there still chicken there?" she asks. I'm kind of overwhelmed by the situation, so I'm like, "Sorry, I can't check the shelves. There's someone on the floor that has had a fit." The lady is undeterred. She's like, "Yeah, but I really want some chicken." I'm like, "Sorry, I don't know if there is any chicken." She says, "Can you just go look for me?" I say, "Sorry, no. I don't know where the chicken is, and I don't think anyone should be shopping in this area because there's a guy who just had a fit and he's lying on the floor." She's like, "Yeah, but why can't you just look for me? Don't you know where the chicken is?" I don't know why, but this is the point I lose my temper. I say really loudly, "No, I don't know where the chicken is because I'm vegan." And at that moment, everything stops. The guy who was talking to the emergency dispatcher has gone silent. He's staring at me. His colleagues who are kneeling on the floor around the guy are looking at me in disgust. Even Chicken Woman is silent. It occurs to me that my announcement might have been the last thing that the poor man having his seizure ever hears. Very quietly, I ask, "Could I please have my phone back?" He gives it to me, and I shuffle out of the shop in shame. I don't know what happened to the man, and I don't know if the woman ever got her chicken. Forget my life. Responses to some common queries. Why was Chicken Lady so rude? I don't know why people are rude. Why didn't Chicken Lady go around me? This was a small supermarket on a city street. It was very cramped. I'm in the UK and we're short on space. Why didn't I tell the Chicken Lady that I don't work there? I did not realize that she had mistaken me for an employee until someone pointed it out. I was kind of overwhelmed and clearly was unsuccessful in putting myself in her shoes. Why do I not know where the chicken is? Firstly, even if I did know where the chicken is, I would still have kept Chicken Lady away from the area because there was a guy having a fit. It's not appropriate for people to step over someone who has collapsed. Back to the question, why do I not know where it is? I guess I'm just not that observant. It's not something I would normally buy, so I don't remember what fridge shelf it should be on. Why do you keep calling a seizure a fit? A fit is a common synonym for seizure in the UK. Am I the jerk for telling my ex-husband my child support obligation is over? I'm 39, female. My ex-husband and I have been divorced for the last 13 years. I gave up custody of my daughter during the divorce and have been sending over child support checks until May of 2020, when my daughter turned 18. My daughter is a quadriplegic and has been since she was 5. Her dad lost his job around 14 years ago, so for the first 2 years after our divorce, the child support me and my then new husband sent over was what helped them survive. My checks have never been late, but I now have 2 kids with my current husband, aged 12 and 8. I've been a stay-at-home mom for the entirety of our marriage, so it's been my husband being kind enough to pay for a kid that's not his. When my daughter turned 18, I talked to her and basically wished her and my ex-husband luck in whatever they chose to do in the future. I get a call from my ex-husband saying that my daughter wanted to start college in fall of 2021. The college they picked was the best in the state for students with disabilities, but that my ex-husband couldn't pay the tuition alone. He said that our daughter couldn't do any of the student jobs available and said if I wanted to do right by my first kid, I should help pay the bill. I was talking to my ex on speakerphone and my current husband interjected and said that was all his money and he has done everything to help me meet my legal obligation, but that's done now. I told my husband that our daughter is now a legal adult and I had covered her expenses when she needed a lot of medical attention at ages 6 and 7, and that we were only a bit older than her when we were already parents. I told him that I had already done right by our child and that college isn't a necessity. I wished them the best of luck in looking into possible other scholarships and grants and said I had 2 other kids that needed me. Am I the jerk for fulfilling all my legal obligations and telling my ex that his 18-year-old is an adult now? Karen wife demands to name our baby Jong-hyun. My wife, 32 female, and I are expecting our first bundle of joy. We're absolutely thrilled. I personally can't wait to be a dad. The due date is April 21st. We're from Ireland. My wife has been a huge fan of the South Korean boy band SHINee since 2008. Their music apparently got her through a lot of tough times. Jong-hyun was a member of this group. He unfortunately passed in 2017. From what I've read online about him, he seems to have been an amazing guy. My wife was devastated when she found out about his passing and told me that when we have our first kid, if it's a boy, she's going to name him Jong-hyun in his honor. At the time, I didn't really take her seriously. The time has come though, and she's very serious about it. She wasn't joking. She even picked out the meaning because it actually depends on the Chinese Hanja characters that you use. Zhong, lineage, ancestry, ancestor, clan, and Hyun, virtuous, worthy, good, able. She speaks Korean, I don't. I love how the nickname sounds, the nickname Zhong and the meaning, but the issue is we're both 100% white. I'm literally blonde with green eyes, and she's ginger with blue eyes and fair skin, legit as white as it gets. I told her that I don't think this is appropriate because we have no Korean blood in us, and she said that's not a problem since it's cultural appreciation and not appropriation. She told me she doesn't want to compromise when it comes to the first name, and I can just pick whatever middle name I want, and she's going to be okay with it. She said that this name means too much for her to give up on it. Her favorite singer and artist, born in the same year as her. Our son is going to be born in the same month as him, etc. Edit. So I've had a long discussion today with my wife, and I explained to her in depth why the name Jong-hyun just won't work for us. I also showed her the many replies, thank you by the way, to this thread, and she thankfully came around. We looked through a bunch of names online for a few hours, and we found the perfect match. Lucian, meaning light and shining. SHINee, plus Tig, Irish name meaning poet, philosopher, storyteller, pronounced as tiger without the ending. Jong-hyun's last album is called Poet/Artist, plus our last name, which goes well with these names. I love this combo, and my wife adores the meanings. It's a win-win situation. Not the jerk. I think maybe your wife needs to stop thinking about what she wants and start thinking about how having a traditionally Korean name will impact your unborn child as they progress through life. Your son would get crap for that from the first day of school. Absolutely. Your kid is not a tool for fangirling. It's a terrible idea to give your Irish kid a Korean name because she likes the band. Suggests she has put very little thought into actually being a mom. But even if it was an Irish name, you still both have to like it. Naming your kid is always a 2 yeses, 1 no deal. Not the jerk. There was a kid who posted here some weeks back whose parents are obsessed with Harry Potter, and she and her siblings all have Harry Potter names, and the poor girl just wanted nothing to do with Harry Potter. It's so unfair to a kid to force things on them. There's gonna be a lot of ticked off women named Khaleesi in the next decade or so. Name your pets fandom names, not your kids. Not the jerk. Kids' names are a strict 2 yeses, 1 no decision. Either parent can veto a name choice, no questions asked. And seriously, don't do this to your kid. Kids can be cruel, and he would really get bullied for this. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. I think they should have named him Jon Snow is what I think. Karen, do you even remember why his last name was Snow?
I don't care. He was hot. Remember when he took that wildling to the cave? Bow chicka wow wow.
Am I the jerk for allowing my mom to visit mine and my wife's house against my wife's wishes? My mom is a nightmare, and she's always disrespecting people's boundaries while also being entitled. She never liked my wife, not for any serious reason other than the fact that I got married and she couldn't stand seeing me move away from her. My wife gave birth 3 weeks ago to our healthy baby girl. My mom insisted she wanted to be in the delivery room, but my wife only wanted me and her mom in there. But my mom was in the hospital lobby screaming about how she deserves to experience the birth of her grandchild. Whenever my mom visited our house, she would always nitpick everything and judge my wife for being a horrible housewife and claimed she'd be a bad mom as well. Since those remarks, my wife has lost her temper and doesn't want my mom to visit again, and I understand why. Nobody would like to be humiliated in their own house. After my wife had gave birth, they kept the baby in the hospital to monitor her for a few days. My wife recovered at home. We got our baby back home eventually, and the grandparents decided to meet her. My wife said she'll be okay with my mom visiting us once for the baby as long as she doesn't make any remarks. My mom promised she wouldn't be out of line, but as soon as she stepped on our porch, she started commenting on our front yard not being clean and that my wife is ridiculous for not cleaning it before getting the baby here. My wife lost her temper and said that she lost all visiting privileges from now on and that we'll take the baby to her house to meet her once we feel like it. It's been almost 2 weeks and my in-laws have met the baby, so had my father. My mom still hasn't, and my wife doesn't want to see her, and she won't let the baby out of the house yet because she's only a few days old. My wife had a doctor's appointment yesterday and I stayed home with the baby. I saw this as a chance to invite my mom over to see the baby as long as she kept it a secret. She came over and I told her we have roughly 2 hours before my wife comes back. My mom then wouldn't leave, no matter how many times I tried to convince her. My wife came home and saw my mom there holding the baby, and she had a full mental breakdown and started screaming at me and her, and she told her to get out of the house. I told her to shut up and calm down, and it's also my house and my kid, and if I want my mom to meet my kid at my house, she can't forbid me from doing it, and she has no right to kick my mom out. That led to her kicking me out too, and now I'm staying at my parents' until my wife calms down. Am I the jerk for bringing my mom to my house to meet my daughter against my wife's wishes, or is my wife the one being unreasonable? You're the jerk. You just described all the horrible ways your mother treats your wife, and you still went behind your wife's back on this to satisfy your mom. The baby is a few days old, but you couldn't wait another week or something? Mommy wanted it now, and Mama's boy complied. Your wife was right to kick you out. You're acting like you're married to your mom, and not her. Right? And you know that he hasn't even scratched the surface. Oh yeah, there will be more that OP either didn't see, understand, or simply didn't care about. I would love to see a post from his wife's point of view because I'm going to guess that this is a tip of a very crappy iceberg. It gets worse. OP said he has a friend that also hates his wife because the wife doesn't like how touchy they were, and he sees her behind his wife's back. And he screamed at her. The absolute nerve. You're the jerk, and your wife would be within her moral rights to leave you for this. I just love the irony. He says right out of the gate that his mom doesn't respect boundaries, then he turns around and disrespects his wife's boundaries and expects his mom to leave after 2 hours. Then surprise, mom doesn't respect the boundary he placed while violating his wife's boundaries. OP and his mother remind me of the TV show I Love a Mama's Boy. I feel terrible for his wife. His wife and his kid are his family, and he should be putting them first. The mentality of, she's my mom no matter what, is also OP enabling his mother's behaviors. Just because she's your mother, it does not excuse her to be horrible to your wife. OP, I respect that my wife doesn't want her around, and I admit that my mother is being horrible, but she's still my mother, and while I understand why my wife doesn't want her in the house, she can't decide those rules on her own. She's my mom no matter what, and deserves to be around as much as my in-laws. Dang, look at all those downvotes. Keep this attitude up, and you won't have a wife much longer. Pretty sure that marriage is already over, and rightly so. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
Is he going to leave his wife and be with his mom? Oh, I can't wait for the next episode of this anime.
My daughter wants me, her father, to walk her down the aisle with her stepdad. I have a 22-year-old daughter, Chloe. Her mom and I were never married. Because of circumstances then, I couldn't be in her life for long. Then, her mom got married when she was 5 to her stepdad, who was a somewhat decent guy. Nosy, but decent. I came back to the country when Chloe was 16, and she was open to the idea of rebuilding our relationship. Though her mom always throws in my face that Chloe's stepdad is the real legal parent and has always been to Chloe, but she knows about the bond I have with Chloe or the things I had gone through in the past, so I ignore her judgmental remarks. Chloe's getting married come February. I was taken back when she told me that she was considering having me and her stepdad walk her down the aisle. I went to have a conversation with her to talk about how uncomfortable I was with this idea. She talked about how her stepdad played a huge part in her life and how she wanted to honor that by including him. I told her, of course, and I absolutely won't invalidate her feelings or deny how much of a good influence her stepdad's been. But I just don't feel comfortable with it, and told her it would be okay if I was just a guest there, but she said she wants me to be part of this so bad. I said it's either me or her stepdad, because there is no way I'm doing this with him. She thought that was petty, but it wasn't. She got upset and was saying that it wasn't okay of me to put her in this situation and make her choose and force her hand, but really, ultimately, the choice is hers, so how am I forcing her hand? She complained about how I was ruining her wedding and making it about my resentment towards her stepdad. The argument escalated to the point where I said I won't come to the wedding if she continues to force the issue. Her mom contacted me calling me selfish, jealous, spiteful, and whatnot, claiming I was willing to hurt Chloe's feelings out of spite just because she dared show appreciation for the man who stepped up and was more of a parent to her more than I'll ever be. I told her, stay out of it. You're the reason we're having this problem. Stay out of it. This is between me and Chloe. Chloe isn't answering my phone calls. I tried speaking to her fiance, and he said Chloe is upset by the fact I put my feelings above hers and disrespected her stepdad by asking her to choose between us. He advised me to do this one thing for her since it's important, but I'm feeling uneasy even thinking about it, so I don't think I'll ever be okay with it. You're the jerk. You've gone the vast majority of her life so far, and she still wants to include you in her wedding, even though you didn't raise her? And your response to that is to make it about yourself? Walking down the aisle takes what, 90 seconds? You can't make someone else's feelings and wishes a priority on one of the most important days of her life for 90 seconds? You can't manage to pull yourself together for a single act of love for your daughter for 90 seconds? It's truly worth it to you to destroy whatever relationship you've managed to build with your daughter and whatever chance you have at having her respect you for the rest of your life because you're not willing to be uncomfortable for 90 seconds? You've worn shoes that are uncomfortable for longer than that. Yet this, the honor of being included at all, let alone in such a pivotal moment as this, is something you refuse to do. She has likely spent the majority of her life questioning your love for her because you were not there. She has generously opened the door to a relationship with you and has clearly begun to believe that she matters to you. You are now doing everything you can to convince her that, no, she was right to doubt how much she means to you. She probably thought you couldn't possibly hurt her as much as it hurt her for you to be completely absent, but she was wrong. She sees you for who you are today and knows that you are capable of true self-absorption like a toddler who just can't see the world beyond what he wants and what he feels. Wake up, man, or you will lose her forever. Over 90 seconds. Get your crap together and grovel immediately, or you will regret it for the rest of your life. You're the jerk. Not to mention the way he talks about his ex. Of course she calls the stepdad Chloe's real parent, because he was the one who did the parenting, didn't he? I think OP doesn't want to face what he already knows. He wasn't a father, and his daughter doing this acknowledges what she and everyone knows. He probably wrote a narrative in his head of how he's a victim of circumstances and this guy stole his life and role. He clearly resents stepdad. OP, you woke up and made a choice every single day to not actively participate in your kid's life. Be grateful she still gives this honor to you because you do not deserve it. You do not get this honor for simply donating DNA. You freely admit to wanting to repair the relationship, so you need to grow up. Acknowledge and thank the man who did your job. Go to therapy to let go of the resentment that are a roadblock to a future relationship with your child. This wedding and every other milestone she has in her future will include her stepfather. You are being jealous, childish, and petty. You are making her day about you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know.
Pride can be a very difficult thing to put aside, but when it comes to our kids, sometimes we just need to do the right thing.
Nice, Karen. That's pretty insightful.
Thanks, I read it in a Dr. Phil book.
Don't want to move your car for one day? Lose your convenient parking spot for a year. This happened on last 26th of January, and today the malicious compliance was done. Not by me, but by the committee of the society where I live. This drama conveniently happened in front of my window. In my city, the residential complexes are managed by housing societies, much like the HOA system in the USA, just not as horrible. Each society has their own committee to manage day-to-day affairs. Also, as my society has much more parking spaces than it has cars, it has no designated parking spots allotted to the residents. Anyone can park their vehicle wherever they want, but it must be a marked parking spot. People mostly park their cars in the same parking spot just because of convenience and habits. Everyone mostly respects each other's spot, and I have never seen any confrontations happening because of the parking. So, those of you who don't know, 26th of January is the Republic Day of India, and all over the country the day is celebrated by flag hoisting ceremonies in the morning. The flagpole of our society, where the flag hoisting ceremony will be held, is just in front of the main gate of society. There are 2 parking spaces just under the flagpole. All other parking are further away from the main gate, and you have to walk some distance to reach there from the main gate. The thing to note is that these 2 parking spots are very, very convenient for all the flats which are facing this flagpole. However, out of respect, people have left one of the parking for one elderly person whose flat faces the flagpole, and the other spot is taken up by an annoying kind of person who never moves his car from this place, or else someone will steal a spot. If this person wants to get into his car, he just has to walk a dozen feet from his front door. On the evening of the 25th of January, committee members asked this person to move his car for a day so that the decorations and other arrangements for the next day's flag hoisting can be made. Someone had already moved the car of the elderly person. However, the annoying guy was too frustrated about moving the car and first argued a lot with the committee people, saying that there is no such rule in the society handbook that someone has to move their car for any kind of festivities, and if you want to move his car, you have to write a rule in the rule book. After a lot of arguments and interference of other people, he finally moved his car. The decorations were done in the night, and the next day, a small but beautiful ceremony was held. And on the evening of the 26th, everyone in the society received a message that there was an emergency meeting of the committee. The rulebook has been amended, and it has been decided that those 2 parking spots have to be converted into 1, and anyone who wants to park in that 1 spot has to take prior permission from the society committee. As expected, only 2 people applied for that parking spot, the elderly person and the annoying guy. And today, the committee unanimously decided that the elderly person is in much more need of that convenient parking spot because of his age, and that spot has been allotted to him for 1 year. Now the annoying guy has to park his car far from his front door for at least 1 year. Pretty sure that he's not going to get the spot next year too. He is not going to like this anymore in the coming rainy season, as we live in Mumbai, which is notorious for its horrible monsoon rains each year. All this just because he didn't want to move his car for 1 day. Am I the jerk for telling my 35 male half-brother, who's 13 male, that I don't want to be his friend and I actually want nothing to do with him at all? My mom got remarried to her current husband 14 years ago. He's an okay man, but my dad will always and forever be my number one. When they announced to me that a baby was on the way, I freaked out. Told them there and then that I don't want to ever be involved in this kid's life. I find it super weird that he's 22 years my junior. I'm old enough to be his dad. Why did my mom even need to have another kid at 42? That baby fever was strong apparently. I found the entire thing disgusting to say the least. The years go by, and when my half-brother was around 10 years old, he started saying how much he wanted to meet me. After a lot of nagging from my mother, I said, whatever, forget it. All right, I'm gonna do it. From our first encounter, he basically clinged on to me. For the past 3 years, he has constantly tried to make me like and accept him, but I just can't do it. He's a nice person and all, but I still find my mom's actions nasty, so I involuntarily associate him with that. I can't help it. I never wanted a sibling. Yesterday, he was over at my place and kept on asking me to watch a movie with him, which I didn't want to do. I ended up going off on him and told him that I don't want to be his friend and actually want nothing to do with him at all. He immediately started crying and apologizing to me, saying that he doesn't have any friends and gets bullied at school for his introverted nature, and that he just doesn't understand why I despise him so much. He said that he's so tired of feeling rejected all the time when all he does is be good to everyone. He said sorry one more time, told me that despite my huge hatred towards him, he still loves, admires, and respects me a lot. Then he runs out of the house. He hasn't reached out to me ever since. You're the jerk. You're an adult. He's a kid. He doesn't deserve to be treated like that because of how you feel about your parents' divorce. I can't even imagine how he must have felt this whole time, trying to be good enough for his older brother. Why even stay in contact with your mother if you were going to emotionally be like this to her kid? Please strongly consider therapy. You're the jerk. Your mother's decision to have a kid at 42 isn't weird or gross. You're now 35 and taking out your mommy issues on a kid. That's the only gross thing here. It's sad they look up to someone like you. Get some help. Work on your issues. You're the jerk. I'm sorry, but really? This is a kid. I don't care what excuses you make to yourself. You shouldn't be talking to him like this. If you really didn't want to be in his life, then you shouldn't have in the first place. 3 years he has constantly tried to make me like and accept him. 3 years he looked up to you. 3 years he tried to make you love him and you shut him down. No, you didn't just shut him down, you made sure to break him. He hasn't reached out to me ever since. Why should you care? You knew what you were doing. You didn't want him around. Congrats, you got what you wanted, jerk. We really want to sit outside. We don't mind if we get wet. A post from a few weeks ago reminded me of this story from when I was a server and I finally got around to writing it all out. I worked at a restaurant all through college and then for a bit afterwards because it was good money and it's hard to make the leap out of restaurants when you're used to that type of work. I was at a slightly elevated American-style restaurant, $21 burgers, giant salads with ingredients like wonton crisps instead of croutons, that kind of thing. And it was honestly a lot better working environment than some restaurants, and you could sometimes make decent money. However, upper management were very much about the customer is always right, except we were required to call them guests, and that we should be the ultimate pinnacle of hospitality no matter what. This led to things like a group arriving 4 minutes before we closed and our managers insisting that we seat and serve them, even though the kitchen had been fully cleaned, side work completed, etc. I can't imagine keeping a server, a bartender, 2 line cooks, and a chef on for an extra hour was worth $40 in profit. Anyways, we had a fairly nice patio, at least for a city. since we were right on the ocean and you could see boats come in and get a view of the city skyline. One day, it had started to drizzle a bit, and a table arrived and asked to sit outside. The host initially said no, as it was raining, and the server, me, would need to be out in the rain. And the guests go, "Oh, we don't mind. We'll be under umbrellas." When the host explained again that the server would get wet, they said, "Not really. It's okay. We don't mind." Wow, so nice for not minding if I get wet while I'm serving you in the rain. As everyone always says in these stories, cue the malicious compliance. What they didn't realize was that both doors leading into the restaurant were on the opposite end of the patio, which was technically a wooden dock over the ocean, and that there was no umbrella or awning between here and there. And while it wasn't a huge downpour, it definitely started to rain harder than it had before. From that point on, I gave their table lots of extra attention. I made sure to bring them out new silverware wrapped in cloth napkin, holding it all on a tray in front of me. I brought them the bread for their table, their cocktails, and all their entrees one by one. I told the food runner that he didn't need to worry about going out and getting wet. I would just take everything. And every time I went out, I made sure not to rush, which meant I was walking slowly and carefully in the rain. Every single thing that got to their table was damp. Their food, their silverware, their check at the end. When I wrote down their order, I even had to go back in to get more paper since my notepad was soaked. It ended up also working in my favor, as several of my other tables I had during this felt bad for me and tipped well enough. When they asked why I was wet, I just smiled and said, "I have a table outside right now, and they said they don't mind being under the umbrella." I wish I had some dramatic resolution, like they tipped me $100 for going out there, or my manager got in trouble for letting them sit out there because they called to complain about their food, but unfortunately, nothing super wild happened. However, as requested, they were served their entire meal on the patio, and every single dish was soaked. I didn't skip a single step of service. I just made sure not to rush getting there. After all, I didn't want to slip, and I guarantee they regretted it. Damp burgers and fries just aren't worth sitting outside for, especially when they realized they were seated directly next to giant windows where they could have easily seen the exact same view and stayed dry. Plus, and it's messed up, but this is a win versus just the bare minimum, but the manager bought me dinner, and I got a brand new uniform, which we had to spend like $80 on. So honestly, it meant I got to do laundry one fewer day a week, which wasn't bad for a poor recent college grad. Karen wants to rename my dog. So this is a bit of an inside joke with my family with this one. For some context, I have a dog named Anya. Well, one day when I was calling her inside when she was still a young puppy, I said onion by mistake, and she came running. So it's kind of been a running joke in my family that we call her Onion instead of Anya. She responds to both. This happened during Christmas. I was in Petco with my dogs picking out toys for their Christmas and getting some kitty litter. A kid, maybe about 14, came up and he was picking out a toy for his dog. He saw mine and asked if he could pet them. I don't mind and let him pet my dogs. He asks their names and I say, "Oh, the black one is Onion." I just let it slip out of habit. And the black and white one is Pippin. Kid, Onion? That's a weird name for a dog. Me, did I say Onion? Her name is Anya. When she was a puppy, I called her Onion by mistake. It just became a running joke. Kid, that's really funny. Then we hear the clearing of a throat, and Karen appears. She was nice at first, and she asks about my dogs, and we just chat for a minute. And then the kid tells her about how I call Anya Onion. Karen, why would you name a dog after a vegetable? That is inappropriate. Me, well, her name is Anya, and I call her Onion as a joke. And what kind of name is Anya? Wouldn't Princess be better? Me, no, Anya is Anya. I have to leave now. Have a good day. No, you will name your dog Princess. It's a good dog name. Me, well, if you really want to do this, her real name is Anastasia, which means brought back to life. She was found in such a state, you would have thought that she was dead. I thought the name to be more than appropriate. So if you excuse me, I turned back and Karen continued to whine about how Princess was such a good name for my dog and how she deserves her more than I do because I named her a horrible Russian name. I paid for my things and left. Dogs were not harmed in the making of this post. Edit. I just wanted to say I did Anya because I was obsessed with Anya from Buffy. Am I the jerk for asking my sister to replace my son's video games she sold? I'm stressed and don't know what to do. I'll keep this as concise as possible, but if more info is needed, I will answer questions in the comments. I'm 44, female, a mom of 4 kids, Joe, who's 16, John, who's 15, Jackie, who's 13, and Janice, who's 11. My husband, Jake, 48, male, and I make a comfortable living. Our kids don't go without, but they are thankful for what they do have. Jake is into console games, which our kids also enjoy. Joe and John have consoles in their room. They each received a PS4 for Christmas, and John was excited to buy some new games with his Christmas money. We do allow them to play games like GTA, but limit their time, and they understand very well that they're just games and not to be emulated. My sister, Tina, who's 40, and her 2 kids, Mike, who's 15, and Molly, who's 14. She's a single mom and isn't home often due to work, so sometimes my niece and nephew took advantage. For example, Mike was grounded over Christmas break for sneaking beer into the house, and Molly is grounded for being caught hooking up with her boyfriend last week. Because of this, my retired mom became their after-school babysitter. This began after Molly was caught last week. Ever since, Tina has gone into overdrive looking for something to blame for their behavior. Here's the situation. John loaned a few of his games to Mike. Tina found them while snooping through her kids' rooms and became furious. She decided to take all of their consoles and games when they were at school and sold everything, including John's games. Mike called me up in a panic 2 days ago and told me what she did. John had texted him about the games the night before, but he didn't know what to tell him because he had already told Tina that they weren't all his games, but she didn't care because they were rubbish. I immediately told Mike that it wasn't his fault and I would take care of this. I called Tina that night when I knew she would be home, and I told her that I knew she sold all of the games in Mike's room and asked her to pay back for the ones that were John's. She told me that children shouldn't be playing such filth and wasn't giving us a cent. I told her that John bought them with his money, and I don't care how she punishes her kids, but she's not punishing mine. She began crying and accused me of calling her a bad mother, yelled at me to go forget myself. Then she handed the phone to our mom, who scolded me and told me my kids shouldn't be playing those games in the first place because my niece and nephew probably picked up their attitudes from those video games. I snapped that my kids respect me and I would never sell their personal property. I wanted the money for my son's games and nothing else. She said, "Grow up, Gina. You're not a single mom," and hung up on me. I told Jake about all this, and he agrees that Tina should have offered to replace the games, but he thinks that I was a jerk for asking when she's a single mom and doesn't make much money. Am I the jerk for expecting her to replace my son's video games? My wife demands to dye our baby's hair. My mom hates my wife, to the point no contact was the only choice. I'll admit I should have done it sooner, but it broke my heart. The relationship was so deteriorated that when I told my mom about the no contact, she said she didn't even care, as long as she never had to see my wife's face again. I haven't seen my mom in 2 years, with the exception of my sister's wedding. My wife and mother-in-law used to be close, but are having issues lately. Mother-in-law has become friends with my mom, despite knowing how my mom talks about her daughter. This obviously hurts my wife. My mom has dark red hair, closer to brown, maybe auburn is the right word, and I have slightly browner, but still some red in it. Mother-in-law is strawberry blonde, and my wife is regular blonde. My wife is currently pregnant. At the wedding we attended, someone who didn't know the situation asked my mom if she was excited to be a grandmother, and my mom said that she would not be meeting the baby and she didn't think of it as her grandchild. But then she turned to us, laughed, and said we might have a red-haired kid, and it's going to drive my wife crazy. My wife got so upset that we left the wedding. A few days later, my wife was talking to her cousin who is a hairdresser and asking if there's any non-harmful way to dye a baby's hair. She said no, and I interrupted and asked what it was about. My wife said that she was thinking and it would hurt her mental health if our daughter looked like our mom's, mainly mine, and she was seeing if there was a way to dye her hair. I snapped at my wife that was crazy and selfish. Our baby isn't an extension of anyone, and her hair is her hair. My wife began to cry and said she wouldn't do it unless it was 100% non-harmful, which now she knows isn't an option. But I said it's more than that, and she shouldn't have even thought about it. She ended up crying for an hour, which she is struggling with the pregnancy hormones right now, but I feel awful. Not the jerk. Your wife needs therapy if her own kid's hair color is going to trigger her. came to comment this. I was sympathizing with OP's wife up until that last bit. Her love for her baby should overpower her disdain for her mother-in-law. There should be no reason to dye the baby's hair, which puts that child at a massive risk for her mom projecting all that anger onto her. It should be monitored very closely. Wife needs to go zero contact with mother-in-law and her own mother. She probably needs therapy. I don't think she's the monster most commenters are making her out to be. I honestly don't think hair color is the real trigger. It's the idea that her mother and her mother-in-law will use the hair color as a weird, pathetic dig against her. She's pregnant, losing her mom, and worried her baby's appearance is going to be a way for people to be cruel. The real jerk here is your mother, absolutely vile. Your wife is pregnant and being harassed, and she needs you on her side. You absolutely should not let her dye your child's hair. That's ridiculous. But that's the sort of ridiculous thing an extremely stressed person is driven to do by an awful mother-in-law. Seriously, your mother is vile, and you need to make up with your wife and keep that jerk away from her. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know.
Nothing wrong with Baby Joker. As long as it's green, I don't see the problem.
Am I the jerk for dropping my freeloading brother off at our aunt's house? My older brother is a bit of a bum. It's mean to say, but it's true. He can never hang on to a job for longer than a couple years max, and when he inevitably loses whatever job he had, he starts mooching off family and friends until he can find another job months later. This entails him freeloading at their place, eating their food, using their stuff, etc. He's lost friends because of how long he bummed off of them, and I don't blame them for cutting him off. Well, this last time he lost his job, he went to our parents, but they didn't have room because they were letting our eldest brother's family stay with them after he and sister-in-law lost their jobs out of nowhere within the same month. Eldest brother's entire crew was laid off with zero warning, and sister-in-law's work burned down, and they couldn't afford the home they were renting anymore. So older brother was pretty much out of luck. So our parents, aunt, and uncle all started calling me, asking if I'd take him in just long enough so he could get on his feet again. I, stupidly, let myself feel bad for him and said okay, but he only had a few months to get another job or he was out on the street. They all said of course, and so he came to stay with me. And it was a nightmare. He's a slob. He never washes dishes, never washes his clothes, and eats pretty much whatever he wants. I guess since I'm his little sister, he figured he could ignore me, saying to get his crap together. Well, after 6 months, I told him he had to go, and gave him a couple weeks to find somewhere else. Well, it seems he called our parents and cried about me kicking him out, and they told him he knew he couldn't stay forever, but they also, of course, called my aunts and uncle and told them all about it. And my busybody aunt called me and scolded me for being cruel to my brother and abandoning family when they need help. I let her talk and finally said she was right. Helping family was important, and I'm glad she showed me that. She seemed glad I understood the right thing to do before hanging up. So I followed her advice and packed up my bro and drove him to her house. I couldn't take care of him anymore. He was running all my bills up, but my aunt made a good point. Family should help each other. So I dropped him off there. She has room since all her kids have moved out and then left. But I wasn't even halfway home before I was getting multiple calls from my parents and aunt. Parents were demanding to know why our aunt was blowing up their phones, and aunt was leaving voicemails shouting at me to come back and get my brother. I explained to my parents, and they said it was a good idea since aunt sounded like she wanted to help. But my aunt called me a jerk and said she didn't want my brother there. And when I told her family helps each other, she called me a jerk. Last I checked, he's still living with her. Am I the jerk? Sorry for my lack of replies. I answered what ones I could before I left for work, and when I got back, I had far too many to answer. Lots of people have been asking similar questions, so I thought answering them here once would be helpful. 1. My brother doesn't work menial jobs. He's not just hopping from one minimum wage job to another. He's working very good paying jobs, like electronic repair, automotive maintenance, etc. He's very skilled, but lazy. 2. No, my aunt hasn't spoken to me since she called me a name, then she hung up on me. 3. My brother has only been with her for about 3 weeks. He stayed with me for 6 to 7 months. 4. My brother was upset I was kicking him out initially, but in a better mood when he realized I had another place lined up for him to stay. Not sure how they're doing together since I haven't talked to her either since after I dropped him off. 5. No, my aunt isn't married anymore. Her and my uncle got divorced and he lives with his new wife, but I heard from Dad that he thought this was all hilarious. Not the jerk. Congratulations, you did exactly what Reddit always advises people in your situation. If they think helping family is so important, they can take care of the freeloading relative. Good job for being kind enough to give him a chance and for being strong enough to boot him out when you were fed up. OP. I'm pretty new to Reddit, so to hear that family being obnoxious like mine is quite common makes me sort of sad. Stick around. You'll see your exact story show up almost every day. It's sad that it's so common, but I find some comfort in the fact that so many of the problems here follow a pattern. We can start to see common pitfalls in modern living and how to address them. OP. An anonymous look at society through a microscope. I see. Hey, the internet's greatest use is as a tool of learning. For example, Reddit taught me to always document interpersonal incidents at work, or to never ever buy a house with a person you're not married to. There are valuable life lessons to be found. OP. Why would someone buy a house with someone they're not married to? Usually because they think marriage is a sure thing somewhere down the road. But again, as shown by Reddit, it's never too late for your significant other to turn out to be a jerk. So, best to be smart about your finances. Stealing my girlfriend's Wi-Fi ended their relationship. Backstory. After my girlfriend moved to her new apartment closer to both her sister and myself, she obviously wanted internet. Although she isn't fully tech-savvy, she does know her basics, and thus explicitly asked the provider if she should be worried about admin/admin kind of Wi-Fi protection. She was assured that it was all fully safe out of the box, no admin. In fact, just press a button to connect her laptop and her Wi-Fi network would be fully secured. The incident. So a few months or years later, my girlfriend started to notice that her internet speed went down. This became very apparent while video chatting with some of her family members in Japan. Like I said, my girlfriend knows her basics, so she knew that it didn't have to be the internet connection itself. It could also be her laptop, or maybe the network cables had eroded due to age. She decided to cover as many options as possible before contacting her ISP support desk, so she asked me to help. I'm a geek, and I worked within the field of ICT for over 30 years now, mostly as systems administrator, but also as IT manager or co-manager. So, visiting my girlfriend and getting to show off my IT skills. It took me a moment before I discovered the issue. Someone was leeching off her Wi-Fi. Technically, the ISP support staff were right. This wasn't an admin kind of thing anymore. It was completely randomized, sort of. You see, on their routers, the Wi-Fi password was the same as the random SSID, aka network name. What the heck? I was quite angry at both this incompetence as well as the blatant disrespect for my girlfriend's privacy. Maybe a bit too much, but yeah. Sure, for some people this is only about getting internet, but what many people overlook is that such leechers will also gain access to your private network. So basically, they could also access any public Windows or Mac shares that you may have active, not to mention any other connected devices. Fortunately, my girlfriend knew her basics, as I mentioned earlier, but I was still angry. The revenge. So I suggested something I had done earlier. Let's replace this crappy router for a professional device. In specific, the same kind of Zyxel router that I used at my home so that we could set up a secured VPN between ourselves and get some other nice feats as well, like a private VoIP connection. She agreed, so we bought her a new router together. We're talking professional gear here. These things cost about as much as a high-end smartphone, so obviously we were going to split the costs, considering that a mid-level could also have helped her out. Now, even though I consider her previous router a piece of junk, I still have to admit that it did provide some useful features, like a syslog service. It could also use USB storage, so I turned on Wi-Fi logging, plugged in a large USB memory stick, and then we waited for the new router to arrive. Then I got to work. First, I set up my girlfriend with a nice hidden Wi-Fi network so that no one could easily find it. Next, we set up a much better security scheme, and then it was time to get even with the lowlifes. I set up a second Wi-Fi network, which was completely the same as the previous one, but this time I throttled it down a bit so that it couldn't usurp the full bandwidth. Then I added some specific DNS overrides. DNS is a service on the internet which translates names into IP addresses, which is what your computer needs to connect to something. You may care about reddit.com. All your computer cares about are the associated IP addresses. Thing is, this service can be easily overridden. and I had studied the logs, so I knew exactly which sites the lowlives visited the most. So from now on, when they would go to their favorite site using this router, it would point your browser to something definitely not safe for work. Then it was time for their second favorite site. I redirected that one to another shady website. I also noticed that a certain web shop was sporadically used by the leechers, so I decided to redirect that one to a relationship counseling website. When you think your spouse is cheating on you, come to us. It was around that time when I noticed that my girlfriend's router was using a more modern firmware than I had on my router. This one also provided web redirection services. Companies can use this to redirect specific websites based on their URL to a local or remote web page. So, say you don't want your staff to use social media, then you could just tell your router to redirect, say facebook.com, to a local web page which explained the no social media allowed policy. Much to my delight, this service also supported a randomizer trigger. See, I still remembered a website from the early days of the internet, something so gross that it became a meme of its own. So I looked for and found a replacement, and then happily added that to a randomized redirection service. So every once in a while, the leechers would open their favorite websites, and no matter what kind of site they asked for, they'd always end up with something completely ridiculous on their screen. Then we waited. I need to point out that my girlfriend did not fully agree with some of my actions, especially when she learned of the aftermath. But we never had an argument over this, because she could also understand my point of view. Don't mess with my girlfriend. And she agrees that if you trespass, even in the digital world, then all bets are off and you lost your rights to a civil solution. Don't mess with a geek, okay? The aftermath. One day, my girlfriend got home from work and noticed a huge moving van outside. She gave it no further mind, but when she got to her front door, she noticed that her neighbor, 2 doors over, was moving out. She brought this up with her direct in-between neighbor a few days later, and as it turns out, things completely exploded over there. The shouting and accusations could even be heard through the walls. Seems the pair got into huge arguments about their choice of websites, and once the deed was done, there was no room left for any kind of reasoning. One of the two even accused the other of hacking the internet, because it was only after the first fallout that those goat pictures started to show up. As far as we know, they broke up. For the record, I regret nothing. I did remove the SSID for obvious reasons and also reset the DNS and forwarding sections, and now things are back to normal. More importantly, my girlfriend is still very happy with the router and the extra services to this very same day of writing. She's working her way up as a 3D artist, and the knowledge that all her work will be fully kept safe after she copies her projects onto my NAS is a deal breaker for her. Seriously, you guys, always remember that when you use someone else's internet connection, this includes free services, then you're fully relying on their goodwill. Such services could easily be misused as well, either through pranking like I did, or worse. Thanks for reading. Edit, some points which people raised. This story didn't play out 30 years ago, at most 6. It was impossible for the couple to make an honest mistake. First, the Wi-Fi names, even default ones, would be far apart. Also, unlimited plans aren't common here, so one way or the other, they'd have seemed to be using zero data over the months this went on. Not to mention that their password would never have matched that of my girlfriend's, assuming of course they even had a subscription or the same ISP. As for me not caring at all about the aftermath, how entitled or unreasonable do you have to be to start accusing someone for opening up a website but then refusing to listen to further reason and instead start major drama? If they had both opened the same website, like the online store, then it would be immediately clear as to what had happened. This also leads up to the honest mistake. If it were an honest mistake, then wouldn't one of them have called their ISP to try and prove their point of being not guilty? At the very least, to complain about shoddy service? Instead, they tore each other a new one. So your Wi-Fi was being stolen, and your response wasn't to change the password or anything? Instead, it was to gaslight a couple and cause them to end their relationship? This is incredibly petty, and frankly, you are horrible. You were the worst person in this story. Sickening, to be honest. The smug satisfaction you seem to get from this makes me wonder how many other times you have used a minor transgression to justify your cruel behavior. So, they were just using the Wi-Fi and you caused them to break up? Yeah, you are a jerk. Congrats, I guess. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the neighbors? Please let us know.
Maybe if the neighbors hadn't been stealing Wi-Fi, none of this would have happened. Sometimes the people who comment on these stories have no common sense.
Come on, Karen, this is Reddit. Definitely not the place to be looking for common sense. Am I the jerk for getting my neighbors fined by our HOA after they called my one problem a me problem? They're my direct next door neighbors. Many elderly and older couples live here, but there's been a rise in younger families with kids. My family being one to purchase about a year ago, myself and my husband and our 2 kids. Our neighborhood has an HOA. Generally, they leave you alone if you don't cause any problems. Keep your lawn clean, avoid parking on the street for extended periods of time, don't paint your house a disapproved color, have any work on your house approved beforehand, and you're golden. I've heard some horror stories about HOAs, but ours is relatively lenient. We have a good relationship with our neighbors, up until now. Our neighbor's house was robbed when they were on vacation about a month ago, so they've installed security cameras, a security system, security lights, etc. The problem is that one of their security lights shines into my son's bedroom at night. It's on constantly, but turns extra bright if it senses movement. Thing is, this light is the most sensitive light ever made. I swear, just a little bug or some wind will set it off. It's bright as heck and wakes up my son, who's 4.5, even with his shutters shut, because it's so bright. So after a week of this, I went to my neighbors and spoke to them. The husband said to me, word for word,
I'm sorry, but that sounds like a you problem.
I kept my composure and asked him if he had properly filed with the HOA before installing these new additions. He said it wasn't an addition, just some lights, so he didn't need their approval. I asked him to please just adjust the light so that it would point away from my son's window, and he said no and asked me to leave. Mad as heck, I talked to my husband about it when he got home. He couldn't believe our, up to now, very nice neighbors would be that inconsiderate, so we contacted the HOA. The very next day, I recognized the head of our HOA's car outside their house. I eavesdropped from our balcony, and she's ripping them a new one. Apparently, they had new windows and front doors installed and didn't have it approved through HOA beforehand. They also built an addition into their backyard, and that wasn't approved either. So they'll be receiving several heavy fines from the HOA, in addition to being required to adjust their security lights as to prevent them from disturbing the neighbors. His wife came over yesterday and laid into me about the fines we imposed on them and said we could have handled this without getting the HOA involved. I told her I tried to handle the security light issue with her husband, but he told me it was a me problem. She insisted she knew nothing about that. I could hear them very loudly fighting shortly after. Apparently, I ruined an important anniversary between them. I'm sorry, but that sounds like a you problem. Our other neighbors heard about it, and today it's 50-50, me versus neighbors being the jerks. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You tried talking to him and being reasonable and turned your problem into a bigger problem for him when he basically told you off. Sucks to be him. Yeah, sucks to be him until he notices OP making any changes to their home. He's gonna be running those to the HOA so fast, OP's head will be spinning. OP, we have made changes, including adding on a balcony and changing out some old windows. We went through the HOA to get it approved. We have a very solid relationship with the head of our HOA, as she's my mother-in-law's longtime friend, and we've been stellar residents. I don't doubt that him or other neighbors will try to put the hammer down on us, but they'll be out of luck. We actually read the HOA guidelines and follow the weekly newsletters. Not the jerk. Make sure you have all of those approvals in writing in the formal HOA-approved manner. Had a friend who made changes only to have the HOA try to rescind. They had proof, so we're fine, but it took a letter from a lawyer to make them take a seat. You are not the jerk, but be prepared just in case. Good luck. Not the jerk. You had no way of knowing all the other crap they did without HOA approval. Their actions were negatively affecting your kid, and they decided to be jerks about it when you tried to bring it up. You didn't ruin their anniversary, their marriage did. HOAs are disgusting control-freak groups. I side-eye anyone who talks about them positively. That being said, this particular instance, OP is not the jerk, but I'd be careful, as now your neighbor and anyone who sides with them is going to be onto the HOA if you do anything to your home they don't like. I doubt you'll be speaking so highly of such a controlling body then. It's laughable that random people, the HOA, who happen to live nearby others think they have the right to control what other people do with their own home over things like installing a new door or choosing a paint color uptight people don't like. HOAs are a joke that isn't funny. Using them to your own advantage this once, it could backfire in the future, by the way. Be wary. HOAs are one of the dumbest things I've ever heard of in my life. Why do Americans do that? OP. Is it an American thing? I really don't know. I've lived in the USA all my life. Do neighborhoods in other countries have some form of an HOA? I'm from Brazil. HOAs here exist only in apartment buildings or gated communities, and mostly only exist to talk about things related to everyone, like elevators, gates, playgrounds, and set some rules on noise, like no noise after 10 p.m. You can pretty much do anything on your property. One thing I find funny is that many Americans say that they have freedom yet can't paint their own house any color they like, or swap doors and windows, or put things in their own garden. Like, why do you guys put up with this? Just to be clear, most homes in the US are not part of an HOA, which means most US homeowners can paint their house, swap doors, etc. without issues. People choose to live in a setting that feels the best for them. Those who choose an HOA setting enjoy the benefit of a set standard that all in the community agree to live by. As evidenced in this case, neighbors also have a quick resource to help settle disputes. There are pros and cons to all living arrangements. I set my classmate up to fail. A couple of years ago, I was studying at university. I've always done well in school, and I'm the kind of person who tends to end up running the group during group assignments. In one of my classes, I ended up in a group along with 7 others, so in total, there were 4 women and 4 men. Every week, we'd have an assignment that we got to spend Monday through Thursday preparing for, and then on Friday, we'd meet up for a seminar with the other groups as well as the teachers to present our work. Out of the 8 members, 7 of us took it seriously. One of the men was always, and I do mean always, late. Not 10 to 15 minutes, more like 45 to 90 minutes. At first, bad teammate blamed it on getting lost trying to find us, which didn't make sense because the setup was that the teachers booked rooms for each group to prepare in, and we always had the same room. Everyone knew where it was, right next to our main lecture hall, which this guy didn't have any issue locating because he showed up for lectures. Then he said he had misread the schedule and thought we started an hour later, but just like with the room, it was the same time every day. When bad teammate finally did show up, it became clear he hadn't read the literature or taken any notes, and the rest of us had to spend half our time explaining the very basics to him instead of doing the actual assignment, and then stress/work late in order to finish. Normally, I don't mind helping people with school. I know sometimes people struggle, whether it's due to learning disabilities, health issues, family problems. I've been in that position myself. What I do hate is people who try to weasel their way out of doing anything simply because they don't feel like it, but then still expect full credit. Still, we as a group tried to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. We checked in with him, offered to explain the assignments, reminded him which chapters were needed to read, and so on. It didn't help. Every Friday seminar, the teachers had a list with all of our names. Everyone had to make at least one comment/answer one question in order to get a passing grade. Higher grades, of course, required more participation, but that was the minimum. So when one of us spoke, the teacher crossed us off the list. When there was around 15 minutes left, the teachers would call out the names of those who hadn't participated and remind them that if they didn't speak, they'd receive a failing grade and have to do an individual written assignment to make up for it. Every week, bad teammate got called out, and every week he kept quiet. After about a month of this, I started to think that maybe this guy had a severe phobia of public speaking and that he was intentionally failing so that he'd get to do written assignments instead. It was sad, but I didn't know what else to do since none of our previous attempts at supporting him had worked. Our last seminar was a bit different from the others. We were still allowed to prepare in groups if we wanted to, but at the seminar, everyone was expected to present individually. Our group agreed to do most of the prep on our own and then just meet up for a quick check-in before the seminar. During this meeting, it became clear that we had misinterpreted some of the questions and we hurried to fix it. Again, bad teammate was super late. He showed up as we were still correcting our answers, but he must have thought we were all done because he said, "Sorry I'm late. I guess I missed the prep, so if one of you could just take pictures of your notes and send it to me, that would be great." We all went quiet for a moment. Then we told him that no, we actually weren't quite done yet, so it would be great if he could sit down and help correct the last couple of questions. Bad teammate looked nervous at that, then said sure, he just had to run to the bathroom first. He disappeared for another 20 minutes, and when he came back, he tried the same thing again. "You're probably done with the prep now, so just send me the notes." Before we could say anything, the teachers called us inside. bad teammate didn't get our notes, and, predictably, he didn't say a word during this seminar either. Fast forward a couple days later, and bad teammate starts texting me, asking for my notes from all the seminars because he totally took notes each time, he just forgot to save the document on his computer, and now he has to hand in 7+ written assignments to make up for the seminars. I was visiting family at the time, so I told him, truthfully, that I didn't have access to my notes because they're all by hand and I didn't bring my notebooks. He kept insisting that I give him my notes. I later found out he had been pestering the other girls in the group too for their notes, but not the boys. At this point, I was very tired and irritated, so I decided to send him some notes, just not the ones he wanted. Remember the last seminar where we had realized that we had misunderstood some of the questions and gotten the answers completely wrong, so we had to correct them right before walking into the classroom? I compiled our incorrect answers, threw in some other unrelated stuff for good measure, and sent it to him. He sincerely thought I had just handed him the perfect cheat sheet that he could just copy. I don't think he passed. Edit. When the next semester started, he never showed up for registration. Heard later from another classmate that he had dropped out, but they found it more likely he wasn't allowed to register for second semester because he didn't pass first semester's minimum requirements. Am I the jerk for not canceling my wedding because my sister-in-law's due date is close to our wedding date? My sister-in-law is 2 months pregnant and she's due on August 6th. Mine and my fiance's wedding date is July 30th. We've saved the date and booked every venue about it since May. Booking a wedding these days can be really hard since everyone is rescheduling after 2 years of constant postponements. My sister-in-law announced that she's 2 months pregnant last week. She also said her due date. We congratulated her and we were really excited. After a few days, yesterday we met with her again and she said she wanted to sit me and my husband down and discuss the cancellation or postponement of our wedding because of her due date. We were shocked and surprised since we never discussed or even implied the wedding would be postponed. We kindly said to her that we won't cancel the wedding and we won't be mad if she won't be able to make it because her due date will be close. She said she won't accept not attending her brother's wedding, so we have to make it work and look for another date. We explained we can't do it right now since every other date will be booked, and if we cancel or postpone, then next wedding date available is after February 2023. She said fine, so be it. We should book it for then. My fiance and I were clear that we cannot and will not postpone. We've already prepaid some aspects of our vendors and we won't get all of our money back if we cancel. Also, I'm gonna be honest, we don't want to cancel or postpone either. The wedding has been booked since spring of 2021. We've almost finished all preparations for it, so we will have the last few months before the wedding more relaxing and chill. Also, my sister-in-law doesn't have an active role in the wedding. She's the groom's sister, but she has no duties she'll have to carry out. She can attend and sit in a chair to feel more comfortable and leave whenever she gets tired. She can also choose not to attend all get-togethers if she doesn't feel comfortable. Even if she had duties, I'd find it perfectly reasonable for her to back out. My in-laws have all gotten involved now, and they're trying to pressure us to postpone the wedding because if we don't, my sister-in-law will probably not attend, and she thinks it's unfair to not be present in her brother's wedding. My fiance and I have not changed our minds, but my sister-in-law claims we are very selfish for not thinking about her feelings too and changing the date. Am I the jerk for not postponing or canceling the wedding? I'd have said, well, why didn't you consider our wedding date when you conceived the baby? Are they or any of your family who's pressuring you going to pay the cancellation fees, etc. to move the wedding to another day? I doubt it. You're not the jerk. The wedding is booked. I hope you both have a lovely day. Remember, it's your special day, no one else's. This is what I came here to write. Like, save the dates have been sent out, deposits have been made, and sister-in-law is immediate family. She could have planned her pregnancy around the wedding. This is what my siblings are doing. I never asked, they chose to do this. This is on sister-in-law and making it about herself. Exactly, she's being a tad entitled. If she wants the wedding canceled so bad, maybe she could refund everything that's gone into the delayed ceremony. It was so easy to compromise, and she didn't. OP, not the jerk. 1. She's only 2 months pregnant, while the process of planning the wedding is almost certainly longer. She could have totally took your wedding date into consideration. 2. If you cancel for her, you're guaranteed to lose booking fees. It's not 100% certain that she'll give birth on exactly the due date. If she does give birth on the day of the wedding, you can still share it through video. The same cannot be said about fees. 3. She wants to attend, so you have to make it work? Sorry, the world doesn't work that way. She'll have 6 months to come up with a way to not miss out. 4. The wedding date is not set in stone, Due date is not. It's unreasonable to expect you to throw away money and plan your lives around a possibility. Karen keeps asking, why are you still single? My response shuts her up quick. I, 36-year-old single female, get asked this question a lot, and since it comes from coworkers, extended family, friends of friends, then responding rudely by saying, none of your darn business, sweetie, still doesn't seem to work. Not anymore. I try to keep good relationships with those around me for a number of reasons, but this question just ticks me off, especially since the reason for why I'm single is pretty awful, and so it's very personal. They feel sorry for me. I can see it because they list all my good traits, then say it's a shame no man is willing to win it. What the heck? Unfortunately, I get caught off guard a lot by people, especially women, asking this question, but since I can't control the fact that they ask, I really wish they'd just leave me the heck alone. I decided to use this method that I came up with very recently. For example, if a woman asks why I'm still single, I'd just tell her, because I still haven't met your husband or boyfriend yet, while acting somewhat flirty in the moment. So far, it seemed to shut them up. It's kind of passive-aggressive, yes, but I just feel some sort of power doing it. Well, a few weeks ago, my sister introduced me to her boyfriend's sister, and once she sits down, she asks, how old are you? I tell her, and she gasps, and goes on to ask, why are you still single? I look at her and say, it's because I still haven't met your boyfriend yet. She has a boyfriend, yay her, in the flirtiest tone I could muster, while also pulling the duck face pose. She looks at me in utter shock, then puts her coffee down while my sister stares at me like, what the heck? Conversation gets awkward, and a few minutes later she gets up saying she wasn't feeling well and leaves quietly. My sister blows up at me asking why I just said that, and I start arguing with her about how this woman was a snoop. She told me to get over myself and act my age and stop being childish, which she assumed is the reason why I'm still single and will always be, because no man wants to be with such a nut job. Her boyfriend said I upset his sister and is expecting apologies from me because of what I said to her. So, am I the jerk? I'm going to say a soft, you're the jerk. Yes, the questions are invasive and unkind, and yes, you have the right to your privacy, but there's no reason to be nasty about it. I 100% agree that people questioning why you're single are annoying and offensive. I get it, hence the soft, you're the jerk. But there are better ways to deflect or get someone to mind their own business. Personally, I'd use the why method. When someone asks you an invasive question, just say, why, in a neutral and curious tone. They will follow up with, I'm curious or something. Reply with, why. Basically, continue to ask why to every response and enjoy watching them flounder as they attempt to explain and justify their invasive interest. It's a similar technique to saying, I don't get it, can you explain it to me? When someone makes an offensive joke at someone else's expense, and watching them flounder as they have to explain why it's funny to be offensive. Eventually, one of two things will happen. They will get bored of the why and change the subject, or they will get frustrated. Either way, you keep the moral high ground, because no reasonable person can say you were being offensive by just asking why. The key is to keep your tone neutral curious, as though you genuinely don't understand the question. Try it and see. Everyone sucks here. It's incredibly rude to ask someone why they're single, but your response is obnoxious and trashy too. I agree with this. I can't comment on OP's situation and what she's dealt with, but would it be wrong to comment, it's a personal reason that I won't disclose, and leave it at that? If they pry further, then you say it one more time and leave if it goes any further. I think it is incredibly inappropriate that people continue to ask these questions to her, but I find it is always better to handle all things with class and strict boundaries. Well, who do you think is the jerk? Please let us know. Some people just can't mind their own business. Am I the jerk for tipping our waitress $20 despite her poor service because my date was playing a game with her tips? I met a guy on a dating app. We hit it off and we arranged for our first date. Things were going well. We had sat down and had started some small chat. Our waitress comes over and asks us what we'd like to order. I say what I want and gesture to him so he can order. He orders and then pulls what I think is about $15 on the table. He says, "This is your tip. Every time you mess up, I take some away." The waitress looked nervous immediately. I'm sitting there a bit shocked, but mostly embarrassed because I wasn't expecting this. She must have been new as well because she did spill some drinks on our table that night, gave us the wrong food, and overall just seemed lost. He took away $13. I asked him why he thought doing tips this way was a good idea. He said it was the best way to ensure good service. When I disagreed, he said, "Can't always be nice to these people. It's not a respectable job." I decided then that I wanted nothing to do with him and called the waitress over to get the bill. I slapped a $20 bill in her hand and got up to pay for my own meal. Later that night, he had demanded to know why I had given her the tip despite her poor service, and I told him it's because he decided to treat her livelihood like it was a game. He said because of me, she'll never improve her service and that I'm just a people pleaser. I blocked him, but I've wondered ever since if that was really the right thing to do. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. So he made her nervous, which likely made her service worse. Then he has the absolute gall to say, "Can't always be nice to these people. It's not a respectable job." What? He's using the service she provides and yet insulting her and all the people who share the same job? Oh my goodness. If it's not a respectable job, why did he demand pristine service? These people have to work during an ongoing lockdown to people who are even more unhinged lately. OP, not the jerk. Anyone that treats servers like this doesn't deserve your time and energy. This guy showed you who he was. You have to believe him. Not the jerk. That kind of game isn't even remotely a good way to ensure good service. It's a good way to fluster your server into making even more mistakes because they're too hyper-aware that they're being judged. Or make a really good server deliberately and subtly ruin every part of your dining experience. Heck yeah, if anyone had ever pulled that with me back in my serving days, I guarantee they would have gotten stank eye and the most glacial but technical service possible. My self-respect is worth more than your $15. Not the jerk. That kind of game is only played by rude folk who have no respect for those they deem below them. That poor waitstaff didn't deserve to be treated like trash because of her job, because she was new, because she's human and not a perfectly functioning robot. Kindness is free. I told my brother's girlfriend it's weird for her to keep an urn of her late husband's ashes in the house. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this happened last night while me, male 23, and my family were visiting my brother's, male 30, girlfriend's, who's also 30, house for the first time. We were all sitting at a dinner table, and I remembered when my brother's girlfriend, who's a widow, saying that she keeps an urn of her late husband's ashes in the house. Conversation led from one thing to another. Then I looked at my brother and asked him quietly if he was comfortable with having his girlfriend's late husband's urn in the house. He gave me a long stare, so I figured the answer was yes, but maybe. He couldn't tell his girlfriend about it, fearing she'd misunderstand maybe. So I brought it up with her and told her it was quite weird to have her late husband's urn in the house. She looked at me and was apparently caught off guard by what I said. She said that she didn't think so and that it wasn't like the urn was on display. Also said this is our late husband's house and where the urn should be. I told her it felt weird, especially since she just had my brother move in with her and he must be feeling uncomfortable with the idea. His girlfriend looked upset and got quiet. My brother shouted, "None of your business! Shut your mouth, Elijah! Goodness!" I responded with, "I mean, personally, I wouldn't be cool with my girl keeping an urn of her ex within close proximity. At best, it'd make me feel uncomfortable. At worst, it'd make me feel creeped out." His girlfriend then replied by saying that I have no business dating a widow then, and I shrugged. She excused herself to the kitchen and stayed there. My brother went off on me, calling me an obnoxious jerk for making dinner awkward and upsetting his girlfriend. I told him I was just giving my opinion, but he lashed out more. My parents and I left, and they told me my brother's girlfriend was being hypersensitive, but I went too far and upset my brother and probably sparked an argument between them, and I should reach out to apologize, but I'm not sure. Edit. Guys, please, one thing you should know is that I had no intentions of being hurtful. I do not hate my brother's girlfriend. In fact, we get along pretty well, but I just wanted to add that I had no malicious intent here. I'm not the type of guy who goes out of their way to act maliciously, but I feel kind of guilty for how the situation played out. Edit 2. My parents are the ones who said she was being hypersensitive, not me. Edit 3. Yes, I overheard my brother venting about the urn when he first moved in, just so you know. You're the jerk. Newsflash, dude. You are not always entitled to your opinion. This is none of your business whatsoever. Think about this whenever you open your mouth to speak. 1. Is what you're about to say helpful? 2. Is what you're about to say necessary? 3. Is what you are about to say kind? If the answer to any of these is no, then keep your mouth shut. This incident, the answer to all three is a definite no. Nice list. You're always entitled to hold an opinion, but not always entitled to give it, especially when it's not asked for. Definitely ask yourself those questions before deciding to spout an uninvited opinion. I'd also add in this case, who gave OP the right to decide how anyone grieves? A surefire, you're the jerk. See, I don't agree that everyone is entitled to even hold an opinion in certain circumstances. I guess it comes from my mom always expressing opinions, often outlandish ones, about people and situations that don't concern her. For example, when she heard my cousin and her husband were divorcing, she immediately expressed an opinion that it was probably because my cousin was working too much in her business, when what actually happened is that her husband cheated on her when he was working away. To me, nothing about my cousin's marriage had anything to do with my mom, so she wasn't entitled to her opinion on it. My thoughts when I heard about the breakup? Oh, I hope my cousin is okay. There's a difference. You're the jerk, an absolutely massive one. It's not her ex. She didn't dump him. He didn't leave her. He was her husband and he passed. That love doesn't just disappear. You don't just erase all memory of a loving marriage. Who else should have his ashes but his wife? Why would you even think to question her or pass comment on this? Do you have no social skills or empathy at all? Your brother already knows her past and accepts it, and it's precisely forget all to do with you. Your parents are also jerks if they agree with you. Everyone else is pointing out that you're the jerk, and you absolutely are. But I haven't seen a comment yet that points out this is not her ex. I wouldn't be cool with my girl keeping an urn of her ex. An ex is someone you, or they, have made a decision to end a relationship with. Her husband passed. They didn't choose to end the relationship. He is her husband, her late husband, but her husband nonetheless. Shame on you for this behavior. You owe her a massive apology, assuming she's even willing to hear you out. I sure wouldn't be. Am I the jerk for canceling my daughter's 10th birthday party when she didn't finish her chores on time? I, 32 female, have 5 kids. My husband, who's 34, of 13 years, works full-time and I stay home with the kids. We have a small 3-bedroom townhouse and no dishwasher. We live frugally as we have a large family, student loans, and the mortgage. We teach kids the value of chores from a young age. Last Sunday was my daughter's turn for dishes. She kept getting distracted by her siblings, ages 11, 8, 6, and 4, and didn't get them done. Every time I went to the kitchen, she wasn't there, and I had to go find her to bring her back. She said the water made her hands itchy, and there were too many dishes. Eventually it was bedtime, so I said she would have to do them tomorrow. Every day last week was the same thing. I left her to do the dishes, and she wandered off playing outside or sitting watching TV. She complained that now there were even more dishes than before. I said, that's what you get for putting it off. On Wednesday morning, I told her, if you don't finish these dishes by tomorrow at bedtime, I will cancel your birthday party. At first, she was mad and cried. Then she seemed like she didn't believe me. She washed a couple things that afternoon, but ended up playing outside again. On Thursday, she acted like the dishes didn't exist and didn't try to do them at all. So at the end of the day, I told her the party was off like we had talked about the day before, and she threw a massive tantrum. She said I was ruining her birthday, and she only turns 10 once. On Friday, her birthday, I sent messages to all the parents of the invited kids, letting them know that we were canceling. I let her pick what I made for dinner, and I baked a homemade cake, but she was still very grumpy with me and struggled to get along with her siblings. The party was supposed to be on Saturday. A few people who didn't get the message showed up, and I turned them away. My daughter wouldn't come out of her room and screamed at her sisters who share the room with her. She called her aunt, my sister, on the family landline, and my sister said I was too harsh and I've traumatized her. My husband says what we did is no one's business, and she's growing up and needs to learn how to help around the house and learn about natural consequences. I did let my sister and parents come over and bring her some gifts this Sunday, after my daughter tearfully finished the dishes, and we had a little family party with siblings, grandparents, and aunts. Today, some of the kids at school gave her their gifts they got for the party, so she has those. But my daughter is still moping around, and now it seems harder than ever to get her to do chores. You're the jerk. She kept getting distracted by her siblings? So she was cleaning up after 7 people and watching her siblings? What were you doing? Clearly not parenting. Yes, this. Stay-at-home parent. I get it. It's hard. I work from home with 3 kids, but they have school, and I get crap done because I'm the mom and it's my job. Sounds like the kids are taking more responsibility than the parents here. Absolutely. And it sounds like there's more happening than the kid just getting distracted. Clearly, she was having some trouble with a task, but neither parent ever bothered to figure out what. I also think it's crazy to have a kid that age do all the dishes for a dinner for 7 people. There's at least 7 dinner plates, cutlery sets, glasses, and whatever servingware they happen to use. And potentially the pots and pans used for cooking too, if OP decided those were the kid's responsibility as well. Chores are a great way to teach kids responsibility and self-sufficiency, but this seems a bit much. You're the jerk. You expect a 10-year-old to do dishes for 7 people? Stop having kids. Buy a dishwasher and get off her back. Also, she kept getting distracted by her siblings, who are 11, 8, 6, and 4. How was she getting distracted? Were they asking her to do things for them? Where were you? What were you doing? As the parent, to stop the other kids from distracting her. What were their punishments for preventing her from doing her chores? I'm all for kids doing chores. I give my own kids chores. But if you can't manage the house with all of your kids helping out, you need to rethink some of your choices. You could have let her have the party, but locked up the gifts until the dishes were done. There were so many choices you could have made, but you chose the laziest one you could. Allergies to dish detergent is a real thing. I am extremely allergic to dish soap. This was started when I had continual exposure to it with barely any breaks. What would have been a normal irritation turned into a violent reaction, and now I can't be near it, or near laundry detergent without gloves. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for canceling their daughter's birthday party or not? Please let us know.
I'm not sure if Reddit is the best place to be looking for parenting advice, but maybe that's just me.
That was easy. I was looking for a Staples Easy button as a gag item to put on top of a large radio tower for a climbing class I was hosting and organizing just before the world went sideways in 2020. I see online the local one has 2 versions in stock and at least 15 of each. One version is even on sale. I was getting some work done on my truck at the dealer a short walk away, so I head over after dropping it off. The store has maybe 4 to 5 employees in the front chatting. I'm one of 2 customers as there was an older lady getting things printed. I spent maybe 15 minutes looking but can't find them anywhere, so I go to the front desk and ask. The woman there says they should be out somewhere, so I ask where. She just rolls her eyes and says they must be out then, but I could order online. Okay, well, it was just for a stupid laugh and not worth paying for shipping, but as I go to leave, I check my phone and see I still have the webpage open. I also see that they have an order online and pick up in an hour option. Great! I have nothing better to do as my truck was supposed to be ready in about 2 hours. I found a nice desk chair in the back of the desk display area to sit at where I could see most of the store from. Then I ordered it for pickup. A moment later, I see an employee leave the front area with a small printout. He proceeds to walk around for a while, passing me a couple times. He can't find them either. After another 10 minutes, he goes back to the front and gets another person to start looking. More fruitless treks around the store, and I can see they're starting to panic. As I am in a swivel chair, I have a great view of everything and can rotate as needed. Thus far, I seem to be unnoticed. Now 3 of them are looking. Another few minutes, and a manager has appeared to see what is happening. Finally, he gets everyone there to start looking, besides one employee that's still helping the old lady. I overhear him commenting on how other things are not in the correct shelves either. After what has now been 1.5 hours since I entered the store, they realize the buttons are all still in a box up on a high shelf. The desk woman I originally dealt with is asked to go get a ladder and has to come past me. Now she finally realizes what happened and makes a very lovely face at me. She finally gets the box down and takes one out to the register while the manager has everyone else gather around to start organizing the store. I still haven't received the item is ready for pickup email, but I get my call my truck was ready. I notice she's glaring at me, but must have entered it in as ready as I get the email. Now as these formerly chatty employees are being put to work, I walk up to the register and get the pickup from her. As soon as I start walking to the door, I hear her manager call her to come help. Thanks for the tip to order online.
Bruh, Staples still exists?
Not for long, Karen. Not for long. Am I the jerk for how I reacted to my boyfriend's game character? My boyfriend, 23 male, of 7 years, recently started playing a new game called Black Desert. I'd like to preface with the fact that he's not addicted to playing video games, and we both have a healthy, balanced routine. I, 22 female, had only ever heard of the game he was playing in passing, and I don't have much interest in MMO titles in the first place, but we have a few games we play together, and I thought I may as well try the game with him. However, After I start and finish a few quests, I meet up with him in-game, and I met with almost a mirror image of myself. The model wasn't perfect, obviously, but the character looked almost exactly like me, down to the facial structure and body type. I was very reasonably creeped out, and I asked him why he had gone out of his way to make a character out of me. His weird as heck explanation was, if I have to look at a character model while I play a game, why not look at someone I already find hot? I said that he was being creepy and obsessive and that I needed a bit of distance, so I've been staying at a friend's place for about 2 to 3 hours. I just can't get the picture out of my head of my boyfriend spending hours creating a lifelike sculpture of me in a character creation menu. I'm starting to feel a bit bad for how I reacted though. So Reddit, am I the jerk? This is why I never date guys who are into video games. They definitely tend to be the creepiest. The same goes for guys who watch anime. I hope you reconsider your relationship with this creep before he does something even worse. You don't deserve to be subjected to this kind of mistreatment. Not the jerk, so far anyway. Gamer here, wife and mother of gamers. It is absolutely normal for a guy to make a hot chick avatar on exactly the theory that they are gonna spend a lot of time looking at it and they'd rather see a hot chick than a dude. However, making an exact replica of someone you know in real life is fairly uncommon that I've heard of. However, as the wife and mother of gamers, I do tend to think it was honestly more of a dumb gamer move than a creeper move. Oh hey, my hot girlfriend. Oh yeah, guy logic and gamer logic. Go figure. But how he reacts if he insists on keeping it or if he's willing to give it a makeover will tell you how much he actually respects you in your relationship. You can then decide accordingly. Not the jerk. I think it's creepy too. If someone did that to me, I'd feel super weirded out. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know.
I thought it sounded kind of sweet, to be honest. But alas, we are on Reddit.
Am I the jerk for taking back my gift and refusing to return it? This happened over Christmas and I'm still getting heat over it. I love knitting and crocheting. It's my thing. This year with lockdown and all, money's been tight, so I decided to knit Christmas gifts for everyone using yarn I already had. Everyone already agreed to only do kid gifts, so I made small stuffed animals, unicorns and dragons in different colors. It was my first time doing these, and all the best patterns are crochet, which I'm not as comfortable with, so it took months to make them all. I didn't mind though. It was fun to learn something new and a good way to use up some of my enormous stash. All my side were happy, or polite enough to act happy, with their gifts. The problem was with my husband's families. His sister immediately started making snippy, sarcastic, but kind of indirect comments about me being cheap and lazy. Niece didn't seem to like it either and said some things that, yes, I get that she's a kid, but my feelings were still pretty hurt. There's a history of this sort of thing, so maybe I'm too sensitized to it, but I angrily took the gifts back and handed her some cash, which made things really awkward and we left shortly after. The big problem happened when niece realized that all her cousins got matching stuffies, and so she wants hers back. I already gave hers away, and I refused to make her another one. Apparently, she's crying and I broke her heart, but I'm finding it hard to care because I'm still hurt by how she and her mother behaved. They have not apologized either yet, but expect me to. My husband thinks I should make her another one and should have overlooked the comments in the first place. I told him that he's in charge of his family's gifts from now on, which is apparently petty. Now everyone, including husband, is mad at me except his stepdad and sister. My family is obviously on my side, but that's just making things worse. I get that snatching the gift back and flinging money at my sister-in-law's face, their words, I don't think I did, might have been overly dramatic and rude, but am I the jerk for it being pushed too far? Edit. I was told I should mention that my niece is around 11 to 12 years old, and that I didn't literally snatch the toy out of her hands like my sister-in-law claims. Niece had tossed it away, so I picked it up. Edit 2. Thanks to everyone who responded. I've tried showing this post to my husband, and unfortunately, it didn't go well. He's upset over me making our private things public, which I understand, but still, his reaction seemed disproportionate. I didn't want to bring my family into this because they already don't like him, but I'm staying with my sister for a bit. I don't know what to do. Sorry if I'm not responding much anymore. There's just too much else I need to think about now, I guess. Not the jerk. Entitled kids grow into entitled adults. We darn sure don't need any more of those. I'd tell the sister-in-law that maybe she should have had some respect and taught her kid respect, and she'd have the matching stuffy. As someone who actually does crochet, Making that stuff is both time-consuming and still expensive because of the materials that go into it, even if it's yarn you already have. Not the jerk at all. I'd be happy to get a handmade gift. Not the jerk. OP, husband should handle the gifts for his side of the family and you deal with yours. That is 100% normal and okay. Sounds like hubby just expects you to do all the labor and have zero responsibility himself. That's BS. Yes, I noticed several issues in this post, and this one is one of them. Yeah, the husband puts in no effort, takes no responsibility, allows his wife to be insulted, blames the wife for his sister-in-law's behavior, demands his wife apologizes when she did nothing wrong, then calls his wife petty because after all of this, she says he should take some responsibility for gift giving for his family. He is the super jerk. Although I get the feeling if hubby was in charge of the gifts for his side, he would blow the entire household budget on his family just to make himself look good and not worry about OP or her family getting anything. OP. It would make life easier if he would buy their gifts because they always love whatever he gives them. Sometimes I would buy things and let him say he bought them and they never complained. But this year we couldn't afford much and everyone knows he doesn't knit or crochet, so it was obvious who they were really from. He wants to go back to the old arrangement, but I don't want to anymore. Am I the jerk for getting a supermarket employee fired after he left a note with his phone number on my wife's windshield? Context. Wife and I were out shopping at the supermarket yesterday morning. I noticed a guy, he works there, following us from spot to spot, sort of like checking out my wife. I wasn't sure, but he kept trying to start conversations with her by offering to get her XYZ products. I felt annoyed, plus the guy was roughly 20 to 21, so he was about 10 years younger than me. Once we got our stuff and walked to the parking lot, I saw a note with a phone number on the windshield. I couldn't help but connect the dots as the following. A. This is my wife's car, and she regularly shops, so the staff here knows her and most likely knows her car. I figured it was someone who knew my wife. Wife asked that I throw it away and get in the car, but I took the note, walked into the supermarket, and started dialing the number. I waited a few seconds, and a phone starts ringing. I look near the register and see this guy standing there with a puzzled look on his face looking at his phone. I immediately and loudly confront him about leaving a note with his phone number on my wife's windshield. He tries to act dumb, asking what I'm talking about. My wife comes inside and says we should go, but I refuse. At this point, customers and workers are just staring at us. I demand to see the manager, while the guy keeps denying, saying he had no idea how his number got there. The manager comes in minutes later and I tell him everything. He apologetically agrees it was inappropriate and unprofessional and borderline harassment. He then tells the guy to go to the back and then tells me he'll take care of it, then further apologizes to my wife. Later, I found out that the guy was fired. My wife said I caused a huge issue for no reason and there was no harm in letting that guy just keep his job. I said she was being unreasonable to think I made him lose his job. She said no, but I could have tossed the note instead of making a scene and causing this college student, how did she know, to lose his income when it's a frequent thing for guys that age to act like that. I don't know, because I feel guilty for escalating things to this degree. I feel pathetic, honestly, and like I acted out of insecurity and anger. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Guys that are like this in their 20s will grow up to be creeps like this in their 40s. I was in my mid-20s and had moved to a new state. I was offered a job at Dunkin' the day we applied for our new apartment. After about a month of being there, I noticed a note on my windshield of my car one day. I looked at it and tossed it. The next day, I drove my truck to work instead. Same thing happened. I tossed the number again. I go home and tell my boyfriend what's going on. The next day, when I go to leave for work, he hops in the car with me. He sat in my car waiting for the creep to do it again. Sure enough, he goes to put his number on my windshield, and out pops my boyfriend from the car. He told the guy to stop harassing me. He actually tries to come into the store to apologize to me, but I wasn't hearing it. Good on you for saying something. He got what he deserved. He followed her around while her husband was with her? This guy is a creep. The employee is deranged. Who the heck does he think he is to give a woman his number while she's with her husband after following her all over the store? Like, did he think she'd be like, "Tee-hee, it's that weirdo's phone. He's so hot. I need to call him ASAP." He is a complete and major creep. What if he does this to someone else? Most will feel uncomfortable and not do anything about it. If they're not confrontational, they'll just start going to other stores. OP did the right thing, not the jerk. Am I the jerk for yelling at a lady who untied my dog while I was grocery shopping? I take my high-energy border collie for daily walks. A few days ago, I was discussing with my husband how strange I think it is when people come up and ask to pet my dog when we are out and about, always older, overly friendly women. Sometimes these walks involve errands where I tie my dog's leash to a bike rack out front. This morning, we walked to the grocery store to pick up a few things, and I left my dog tied securely at his usual spot. As I'm heading inside, an older woman says to me,
What's your dog's name?
I thought to myself, oh no, I don't want to engage with her. So I just gave her a short glance and told her, and I raced into the store. I spend 5 minutes inside the store, then come back out and see this woman holding my dog. She had apparently untied him and moved him to a new spot. As I walk out, I gave her the death stare and said, "What are you doing?" She explained that she thought the spot I left him in was too wet, so she wanted to move him to the other side of the building. Then she couldn't hook the leash up, so she just decided to wait with him until I returned. I lost it on her outside of the store and told her to never touch my dog again, or he may bite her, and she should never move other people's dogs without them knowing. Now I feel somewhat guilty for yelling at her when she was probably just clueless and trying to help. Am I the jerk for yelling and leaving my dog unattended when I know this behavior exists where I live? Or is she to blame for moving and touching my dog without my permission? Karen's stepdaughter demands I buy her a $60,000 car. I, 38 female, have a 16-year-old daughter. About 7 years ago, her dad and I divorced. Him being the only breadwinner and a high earner at that, and me being a housewife, he preferred to let us live in the house, a big one in a gated community, and continued paying all of our expenses and giving me spending money to maintain my lifestyle. 2 years later, I met my current husband. A year later, we married, and he moved in with me and my daughter. Him and my ex are great friends, especially since my ex is still very much a part of our life. Also, as a wedding gift, he gave me half of the house. Now I own it in full. My husband has a daughter with his ex. They have shared custody, and she lives with us half of the time. The problem is that my ex pays for our daughter to go to a really expensive private school, buys her expensive gifts, and for her birthday, he bought her a $60,000 car. My husband can't afford the same for his daughter. My daughter and her stepsister do not have the best relationship, mainly because my husband's ex hoped that they would be getting back together and keeps influencing her daughter. My daughter used to share her stuff until her stepsister started ruining them on purpose. That was when my husband made a rule that they can't borrow from each other. I stay out of it since she refuses to see me as a parent, and I won't force her. My husband has a good job, but nothing close as to what my ex earns, and since we both decided that this house is enough help from my ex, our income is just what he earns, which in my opinion is more than enough. Now my stepdaughter's 16th birthday is coming up, and she asked for the exact same car that my ex gave my daughter. We refused, of course, and said we would buy her a gift that fits our budget. She threw a tantrum and threatened my husband that she would never talk to him again if he didn't get her the same car. He is wavering, but I refuse. $60,000+ is just under what he makes a year. It will drown us in debt. We are still paying off his student loans and some medical debt he has. But on the other hand, he loves his daughter a lot, and I feel partly responsible since she wouldn't have asked for it if my daughter didn't get the car for her birthday. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your ex bought your daughter the car, right? So tell your stepdaughter that her mother can buy her a car to make it equal. I like this answer a lot. It's the best answer to this, honestly. I love answers like that do an Uno reverse on the people. I would warn OP though to be careful of stepsis keying or damaging her daughter's car, or even trying to take it for a joyride or steal the keys if she knows where OP's daughter keeps them in retaliation or jealousy. OP should talk to her husband about what to do if this happens and to check with insurance to see if it would still be covered. I would also talk to X about the concern of this considering he bought it and it was a gift to their daughter. Maybe all three could come up with a game plan on what would happen in that scenario. This is a real possibility if the ex is influencing OP's stepdaughter and the stepdaughter was already destroying her daughter's stuff to begin with. Also, OP has to be real clear with her husband. While he wants his daughter to be happy, she wants her daughter and her belongings to be safe, and that if she damages the car, she cannot stay with them. Her daughter, as a repeated victim, would come first. It would be just like how he would put his daughter first if the situation were reversed. It would suck for him, understandably, but it isn't healthy for OP's daughter to be in this situation. And if OP's daughter goes to live with her dad, which isn't fair to OP or daughter as it was originally her and her parents' house, the stepdaughter's hate will turn towards OP and mess with her. Not the jerk. Like you said, you can't afford it. That is enough reason to not buy it. If she continues, tell her in the spirit of fairness her mom should be the one getting it for her since your daughter got it from the parent that is not part of your relationship. Not the jerk, it is way out of your budget. The fact that you guys are offering to buy her a car at all is more than a lot of teenagers get. Is it unfair that your daughter has a $60,000 car while your stepsister won't? I mean, I can see how it seems that way from a teenager's perspective. But your daughter received that gift from her father, not from you or your new husband. It would be one thing if you and hubby decided to buy your daughter a car but not your stepdaughter. But she can't demand a gift from you that your daughter got from someone else. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is her stepdaughter? Please let us know.
I'd get that little brat a one-way ticket to a boarding school.
You can't have a 5 out of 5 in all categories 2 years in a row. These were the words my HR said to my manager when he put in my annual performance review for this past year. To explain a little background, I work in a niche part of research agriculture. I'm good at my job, I do it well, and everywhere I've went, I've made myself extremely hard to replace. Basically, I'm good at what I do and it reflects. My manager is very open with me. He is the most transparent manager I've ever had, and in fact, he shares with me certain details that I'm not supposed to know, such as salary raises, bonuses, stupid things that HR says to him in an email. After another great year of research and proving myself invaluable, which not only included 2 raises, 25% salary bump altogether, a hefty bonus, title promotion, enrolled in a mentoring program, listed as an extremely high performer by upper management, and being put in charge of advancing several field technology advancement projects, basically incorporating new cutting-edge tech in the field of research, all while attending college. Company was sending me back for free. I figured I had done amazing for the year. Reports were done and filed. Everything from safety to EHS to the I's being dotted and T's crossed was done. I could not have finished the year any better. Now this was the end of my second year at this job. During my first year review, I had been marked as a 5 all around by my manager. There's something like 4 categories you can score in, impressing not only him, but several of the upper management seat holders as well as the company VP. That's what led to my promotion and raises. This last annual review, my manager was having issues submitting my review. After some emails back and forth with HR, he explained to me that HR had just informed him that
nobody can have a 5 out of 5 in all categories 2 years in a row. Mark him as a 4 out of 5.
This was the general synopsis of the email. So I did what I do best when I get petty. I asked my manager to forward me the email. Informed him that I was okay with the 4 out of 5 rating and that I don't expect him to try to fight HR on it. Then let the process stew for a few weeks. After the reviews were finished and sent back, they were accompanied with AVIP projections for the next year, salary increases and bonuses, and what do you know? My percentages were marked lower because I had gone from a 5 out of 5 to a 4 out of 5. Since the report made it seem that my performance had lacked this year from the last because of my score, even though my actual performance never suffered, I was put in a lower category of AVIP, meaning less money for me, which wasn't gonna fly. I put together all of the report, the email from HR, as well as the input from both my manager and my peers that are included in my review, and emailed it to my VP, Director of Marketing, and Director of R&D. With my manager and HR CC'd, I wrote, "This is fairly summarized. Due to the failure of the company to recognize my growth as an individual and mark me as slipping backwards on a progressional chart when it was obvious I had not, I will henceforth begin taking an only 80% or 4/5 of the current workload I have been assigned. I have been absolutely committed to the work and projects I have been assigned. In fact, getting my station ahead on audits, various projects, and coming under budget for the second year in a row seems to have been overlooked when due diligence was observed for my annual review. All due to the fact that an employee cannot be a 5 out of 5 twice in a row. I believe it to be absurd that this is how my performance is graded when I have had no complaints or issues from my peers, customers, or managers throughout the year. In fact, being told the opposite. I will look forward to my performance review next year to see how HR determines my new score." I sent this on a Friday at 4 p.m. right before I left. I got an email Sunday evening from my VP with HR CC'd stating that my review had been changed. Monday morning, I had my new AVIP projections in my inbox. Sometimes you gotta go to bat for yourself. Edit. To everyone asking, yes, I did get permission from my manager to use his email in my email. He had advocated for me in the past and is all for personal growth. He has been known to butt heads with some people in the past, but as far as I've seen, there's been no retaliation towards him. The rule was one made by our parent company. The parent company has several thousand employees, while the company I work for only has around 150 employees nationwide, including the management team. I don't remember the exact number, but it's small. Many of the policies are adopted from our parent company, but in this few, my VP decided to ignore the rule. And to those who are claiming my story is fictitious, you're free to feel that way, but nothing about my profile nor my comments would otherwise point to me making up stories for karma or praise. Also, if you're being walked over at work or treated badly, stand up for yourself, learn to sell yourself, and refuse to take mistreatment from employers. Employers who mistreat their staff are not worth your time or your mental health. This is great. I'm glad it worked out for you. I worked in a place, a large company, for 15 years. For the first 8 years, I received 5 out of 5 in every category. Then, in year 9, I was surprised to see 3 out of 5 in some areas. 4s and 5s were automatically blanked out on the updated performance review. Apparently, HR didn't want anyone getting 5 out of 5 across the board anymore. Stated employees lose motivation if they don't see any need for improvement. I'm glad I left. Am I the jerk for expecting my adult daughter to pay me back? I'm 48, male, and my daughter, 21, female, Aria, abandoned us, her stepmother, younger half-sister, and me when she was 15 to go live with my enabling ex-wife, Sandra, and her husband. Until then, we had 50-50 custody, but Sandra has always been less strict than me. She's always let Aria do whatever she wants and has never had any home rules. She also buys Aria everything she wants, so she will want to live with her. Sandra lives in the same town where Aria's high school was, while I live 25 minutes away. So one of my rules was that if she went to meet up with a friend there, meaning I had to drive her, the next time they met, it was her friend's turn to come. If the friend's parents didn't want to drive the kid here, then Aria wasn't allowed to meet them again while she was with me. Everything was fine that way for years. The major fallout happened in her last year of high school. She was 15. She went on a trip to another country with her school and didn't bother to send more than a couple texts when she was away for 5 days. So I decided to ground her because she had to learn to respect and show some love for her family. She insisted she had sent messages to her mother, but we had barely heard from her. She's never had a lot of friends, but she had been invited to some popular girl's birthday party. This was my punishment, not going to that party after forgetting about her family. She got upset and started calling her mother to come pick her up, but it was illegal to get her if it was my week. Plus, she wanted to go to her mother's because she would lift my punishment and let her go to the party. Her mother came by the end of the week, and I told Aria that she didn't have to come back if she didn't want to. I waited, but I heard nothing from her again. Her sister kept asking me why she didn't come back, and I didn't know how to explain to her that she didn't love us and that she preferred staying with her mother, her parties, and her free-of-rules life. Over the years, we've communicated through lawyers because Sandra has zero intentions on helping me get my daughter back. She finally has her to herself. They've been demanding that I pay child support, even now that she's 21 years old. I have to pay for that and for half of her college expenses, by law. When Aria turned 18, an adult, I started adding up everything I had to pay in Excel that I sent to Sandra when I updated so she knows what damage she is doing to our daughter. I expect Aria to pay her debt, but I gave Sandra the option to pay for her, to which she refused. We are now at $18,000. Aria has been trying to get in touch again. I told her that we can't fix the emotional part unless we fix the money part first. She needs to prove to me that she doesn't only care about the money. Sandra says I'm the jerk, but I think she is, since she has done nothing but try to take my daughter away and she finally has what she wants. So, am I the jerk? You're the jerk and a horrible father, and I can see why your daughter left. This, OP, you're not acting like a father, and any hostility you experience from your own daughter after this kind of behavior is well deserved. You're the jerk. He should definitely expect hostility. Why would he think he's entitled to his daughter giving him money that he had to give her by law? He obviously only cares about money and not his daughter. You're the jerk. I'm so glad his daughter got out of there and is in a safe, stable environment with her mother. OP is undeserving of her love. No wonder she didn't text much while she was gone. She was probably enjoying the distance from her jerk dad and didn't want to end the vibe. Even after reading the first sentence, "My daughter abandoned us," I was pretty sure OP is going to turn out to be an insufferable jerk. And yeah, I read that and rolled my eyes. It was the same word my mom used to describe me moving in with my dad after she had fostered a toxic environment for the 7 years I lived with her post-divorce. Yeah, the entire post reeks of "woe me." It was literally dripping with it. How surprising that these people end up with adult kids going no contact, huh? And yet, they are always surprised. I'm blown away that any father could write this and not realize that he is the jerk. The little Excel sheet OP created is the icing on the cake for me. OP's complaining about his daughter only caring about money while simultaneously demanding she pay him back for the money he was legally obligated to provide. OP isn't owed anything, and he's going to lose his daughter if he insists he is. It's obvious from his post that OP hates his ex. I'd put money that OP's attitude about his daughter's mom contributed to the kid leaving. Also, what high school senior calls home repeatedly while on a school trip? The kid was thoughtful enough to text multiple times and to keep in contact with her mom. OP comes off as controlling, jealous, and immature. I'm struggling to understand why his kid wants anything to do with him. I saw red reading this. Reminded me too much of my own father. We haven't spoken in over a decade. OP, she didn't abandon you. She realized you made being at your house a very toxic environment for her and decided to do what was best for her and get out of that situation. You dug yourself this hole and now you can deal with the consequences. Also, I guarantee that if you try getting her to pay back the money you were required by the court to pay, child support in college, any lawyer would laugh in your face. That's called being a parent. It's not a loan. You're the jerk times a million. Edit. I also want to point out the hypocrisy that OP accuses his daughter of only reaching out because she only cares about the money, when really, OP seems to care more about the money than rebuilding a relationship with his daughter. The irony. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know. So I recently had a run-in with UPS. UPS smashed a nearly new MacBook that I sent with them. I asked them nicely to pay me back for it, and they messed around blaming me, blaming my packaging, saying it was impossible, they damaged it, etc. I was able to prove my packaging was flawless and get a statement from the Apple shop that I took it to say that it was damage caused by being dropped or thrown. I could also prove it worked when I sent it. They weren't interested and messed me about for weeks, sending me from pillar to post, even threatening to make me pay interest on customs charges, which I wasn't liable for, as the laptop was smashed on arrival and thus worthless at import. I took it to small claims. They hired a lawyer who sent me letters saying they contested it and would go for full fees, etc. if I lost. I went for it anyway. I did law stuff university, so I know the basics, and I thought my case was pretty clear-cut. I won. I won my costs back, plus extra, plus interest. They ignored the court order and did not pay. Now, this laptop was originally being sent to my beloved mother-in-law. She asked me to help her with the problems, as UPS was also seriously harassing her for the customs fees. However, very unexpectedly, before I could resolve it, she passed. It was the last thing she ever asked me to do for her. I loved that woman more than pretty much any human on this planet. She was my mother, my best friend, and my mentor. Taking down UPS was now my personal vendetta. I researched my options. I could have taken the usual, more conservative legal routes to reclaim my money. But no, forget them. I don't care about the money anymore. I want revenge. I want drama. I want karmic justice. I went to the high court. I got a writ of control. I, of course, added on more fees and more interest. I then hired the most aggressive bailiff firm in London. I trusted that the crappy processes and attitude of UPS to mean they would ignore the letters and actually get a visit. They did. The bailiffs rock up at UPS headquarters and explain the situation. UPS refuses to pay, so the bailiffs start listing goods. Security tries to make them leave. The office manager tries to bully them out. Obviously, no craps are given by the bailiffs, and they crack on with their jobs. I wasn't allowed the body cam footage, but they did send me a detailed report. The final conclusion is copied from it below. Calls were then made to the accounts manager, who arrived in a hurry. As no payment was forthcoming from them, the agent again explained the removal process and costs involved and called the office for approval to begin removals. The agent began to seize assets. The finance director then arrived on the scene. He was not at all happy about the attendance, but ultimately agreed to pay a voluntary payment in full from his personal account in order to stop the removal. I know it's a drop in the ocean to UPS, but I got more than double what I originally asked for to replace the laptop. They would have had to pay even more on top in fees to the bailiffs. I reckon it cost them at least 3 times more than the original claim in the end. But mostly, I just enjoy the mental image of the flustered finance director and his impotent rage, having to pay his own money to stop the heavies taking desktop computers and fancy plants and things out of their swanky head office lobby. Am I the jerk for accidentally sleeping on the couch with my husband? Me, 24 female, and my husband, 24 male, are visiting my family. My husband, kids, and I were getting ready to go to our room for bed when my parents started acting really awkward, like something was off. I asked them what was wrong, and my mom quietly told me that my husband should sleep on the couch in the living room. I was a bit shocked because, why? Apparently, my dad doesn't feel comfortable. I called her and my dad weird and told my husband to ignore them. We finally put our kids to sleep and are getting ready to sleep when my mom barges into the room and says that she doesn't want us in the same room alone in her house. My husband is terrified at this point because he was in the middle of changing, so he leaves for the couch, and my mom says she's sorry, but she's not in the mood to deal with my dad's complaining all night. I pointed out that my younger sister, 21 female, and her husband have slept in the same room at their house multiple times, and she's never said anything, and she goes,
Well, your husband is white, so your dad feels weird.
I was over it, so I said fine. I got up at like 4 a.m. to drink some water, and I saw my husband wide awake, just lying on the couch. He said the couch was uncomfortable as heck, which yes it is, so I sat down next to him and we both accidentally fell asleep. I woke up later to my mom freaking out. She was whisper yelling, so she doesn't wake up my dad, and asking if we're that codependent on each other that we can't spend one night alone. I tried explaining that it was a mistake, but she kept calling me disrespectful and said I was selfish, etc. I was upset, but my son called for me, so we ended our conversation. Now I'm wondering if I really am the jerk in this situation. My mom says I am because I was being selfish, disrespectful, and completely disregarded how difficult her life would have been if my dad had found us. My whole thing is that it was an accident. I'm 24. My dad is being weird, and my sister's husband doesn't have to do this, so why does mine? Am I the jerk? Edit. My family and I are South Asian. Edit. Yes, I know a lot of this has to do with my husband being white. I called my parents weird, strange, and awkward because of what they were doing. Glaring at each other, randomly going quiet out of nowhere, etc. They do this pretty often and have been doing it for as long as I can remember. So much that my sister and I call it the weird mood. Like, keep an eye out for mom and dad, they're in their weird mood. Not the jerk. What kind of shenanigans is this? I don't see why your dad has any issue with you sleeping in the same room as your husband. You guys have kids, so clearly things have happened. And why is it any different that he's white? Do they treat your kids differently too? If they do, you need to step up and protect your kids, and step up for your husband too. Right? I'm glad that I'm not the only one who thinks my parents are being very strange. Like, I don't know what they're so afraid of, considering we literally have kids. They treat my kids well. If they even dared to say anything to them, I would definitely not be on good terms with them. I'm the first person in my family to marry a white person, so I understand the initial shock when I told them, but that was years ago, and I thought that they had gotten used to it. Because this was my husband's first time staying over, I didn't know this was going to be an issue at all. I'm still upset, but my husband keeps telling me it's fine and that we're leaving anyways. However, now that I've gotten a few comments, I'm thinking of talking to my parents about how weird they were being. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her parents? Please let us know.
No love for jerks like those parents. They don't even deserve to have you and your family visit them.
Would I be the jerk for throwing a party at my place and sending my pregnant wife to a hotel? I'm 35, male, and my wife, who's 32, is 36 weeks pregnant and is having the baby shower over the weekend. She has no friends living nearby, so it's going to be done over Zoom. I only mention this because we would not be having this issue as she would have just gone to a friend's house like she normally does. My friends thought it would be a good idea to hold a dad shower / birthday party for me in the evening on that same day as my birthday is over the weekend. Unfortunately, we have a larger home than all of my friends, and with current restrictions in my province, we have to hold the party at our house. All my friends have pitched in for a hotel room for my wife. She's pregnant. I know my friends. This party will go on much longer than it has to and will be much louder than it has to. She initially agreed to stay in the hotel. However, my wife changed her mind, stating that she's nervous that she might go into labor on that night, and she would prefer to just stay in one of the bedrooms at our place. Furthermore, she's now also stated that the party can only have male guests because, as she states, there are restrictions and there's no need to have +1s or any ladies there. Despite the fact that even with no +1s, we will still be above the restricted limit. As soon as she brought up the potential to go into labor, I immediately decided that canceling the whole party was the responsible thing to do. However, she doesn't want me to do that. She wants me to hold the party, but ban ladies from coming, while she stays in one of the rooms. I know my wife well. As long as she is in the vicinity, my phone will be blowing up about noise, guests, etc. Frankly, I just want to cancel the whole thing, but she won't let me. So now I come to you. So, would I be the jerk if I just tell her to stay in the hotel and have the party that I want to? Edit. Thanks everyone for your input. A lot of people brought up lockdown. Thanks for raising the concern. We've both had our shots and are boosted, but we still got sick a few weeks ago. She was invited to the dad shower / birthday party, but she's pregnant and she doesn't really want to go out of the house right now. My friends and I managed to move the party to another location. As many people have stated, it's pretty crappy for me to ask my wife to leave the confines of her home for me to have a rager. Canceling was never an option for her. That's just how my wife is, and I love her for that. Seriously, you're the jerk. You can go have your party at a hotel and let your very pregnant wife stay home in comfort. No, wait. Your wife is 36 weeks pregnant and could go into labor at any time. You need to be with her. Tell you what, why don't you both stay home and have both showers by Zoom? He has about 14 days after this gathering where he could test positive directly from the party, right? If that happens, he's probably not allowed in the delivery room. Hospital rules vary, but she could very well have this baby between 38 and 40 weeks when he's not allowed in. It doesn't matter where the party is held. And if he passes it to her and she tests positive when she goes into labor or gets induced, then she may have to go to labor and deliver in a mask when she wouldn't have otherwise, have the newborn taken from her, or whatever else the hospital has in place. This is not worth it. Entitled Parents won't let me keep my computer that my friend bought for me. While reading some of the posts here, I was reminded of a story about my parents that happened a few years ago. Cast. We've got me. We've got Entitled Dad, my dad. We've got Entitled Stepmom, my dad's wife. Quick background. This story happened 2 years after I graduated high school. After I graduated, I decided to go study in a city away from my parents, so I had to rent an apartment. Despite the fact that they were wealthy enough and that high school went perfectly fine, no doubt that I was going to graduate. My parents, and especially Entitled Stepmom, refused to pay for my apartment. I had no money whatsoever, so my grandparents intervened and decided to pay for the rent each month. The only money I was getting from my parents was my mother's alimony paid to my dad because I was still a student. I'm a gamer and a nerd, and at the time I was playing World of Warcraft, still am to this day. But I was playing with a crappy laptop that was getting slower and slower. An in-game friend of mine in my guild, who I became quite close friends with, bought me a computer and surprised me with it when I invited him for a LAN with other friends from the same guild. I was ecstatic and so grateful for this. Now on to the story. 2 years pass and I graduate with a 2-year diploma. I decided to pursue engineering school, and the one I got into was in another city, so I had to move out. As I had 2 months before starting school again, I moved all my belongings into my parents' garage, including said computer. My dad knew I had it because I already told him about it. Never told Entitled Stepmom because it was pointless to me. The next day, I went to spend some holiday weeks at my grandparents' holiday house. While on the train, I received a message from both my parents, Entitled Dad and Entitled Stepmom, and this conversation happened. Entitled Dad and Entitled Stepmom.
What the heck is that computer in the garage?
Me. Well, it's my computer.
How did you get it? With what money?
A friend gifted it to me. Already told Dad about it.
That's a BS story.
At that point, I was really getting frustrated, so I tell them they can call me when I get to my grandparents' place. A few hours later, I'm at my grandparents' and they call me. The exact same conversation ensues, and they do not believe me on how I got the computer. So my entitled dad has the bright idea to ask my friend to give me the invoice of the computer. It was a pre-built tower, so he could trust me. I contact the friend to see if that's possible, and I was so embarrassed to ask him because I told him the exact reason I needed it. He said no problem and sent it to me, so I sent it to my dad. I thought they were convinced, but they were still scolding me for having that computer. Fast forward a few weeks, and I'm back at my parents' house because I need to move for engineering school. I try to pack my things, but they refuse to let me get back my computer. At that point, I was 21 years old, and I was making my own money because my engineering school was an apprenticeship, so I was a student and an employee. Me, you can't possibly tell me to leave it here. You didn't even pay for it. Entitled dad and entitled stepmom.
We don't care. You're not taking your gaming computer to school.
No point in arguing, so I went away without it. Unfortunately for them, I try hard to get the things I want. I knew they were going on vacation somewhere on the other side of the world in December. So what did I do before they left? I ordered a new computer case and asked a friend of mine if she could send me her old spare parts. I knew she had some because a few months before, I gave her some parts because I upgraded mine. While my parents were away, I went to my parents, brought the new case and the old parts, and installed the old parts in the old case, and transferred my computer parts into the new case. I left the old case in the garage and took my computer with me. It has been a few years now, and I have been authorized to have my computer back. They still don't know. Edit. Well, I made my parents sound way worse than they are. It was more of an isolated episode, and my relationship with them has greatly improved over the past 3 years. But I won't forget that.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.